Hello there, MESBG fanatics. Welcome back. I am here today to talk about the event I ran a few weeks ago, the Battle of Greatest Armies, and I'm joined by Richie and Josh, who are longtime members and great friends of the channel. So, welcome, Josh and Richie.
Thanks for
Happy to
having
be here.
us.
Look at that. They sync their timing because they're just that much in sync with each other.
We are one.
We are one. We are Legion. So this was 1,000 point event, and this is my fourth one I've run. Josh, Richie, I think you guys have been to every single one of them.
I believe so.
Yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah, I do remember because we first met at Dry Falls, which is at the end of 2020, and then the first one was 2021, and I'm pretty sure you guys have been to every single one, plus some of the little stuff I've had in between. So thank you for being great supporters. I will say that at the very least.
It's always
Thank you.
fun.
Thank you for lodging us for this last one or two.
Hey, I'm always up for lodging because we get lots of fun conversations and friend time in between. So this event was based off the Battle of Five Armies. I alternate from year to year. So the first year was the Battle of Pelennor Fields, then Battle of Five Armies, alternated back for the third. And so we're on to the Battle of Five Armies. So it was obviously thematic for that. A number of prizes were that way. The rankings, I didn't do a top 3. I did a top 5, which was the Ishtari Council because there's 5 wizards. A lot of good thematic armies that were there for that event. We had 24 folks show up, which was really cool. One of the biggest ones I've put on since that very first one back in 2021. And of the 24 armies, I think 9 or 10 of them were Hobbit based for the Battle of Five Armies, from ranging all the way from Azog's Legion to Lake Town to Iron Hills and some Thranduil's Halls. So very cool. Now, Richie and Josh did not play the theme.
No, very much did not.
No, I played dwarves, but I did not play the theme.
You played dwarves and elves. You gotta include both armies there.
No, fair enough. Fair enough.
To be fair, at 1,000 points, usually those armies that really only do well at higher levels is what you see played more popularly. There were a number of Rivendell / Numenorian Last Alliance armies there. Those are the ones where Azog's Legion. We had an Azog's Legion with the Tower of Azog, the Signal Tower. So I mean, those are things you're going to see at 1,000 points when folks can finally break out those big things. So it was
My list
pretty
was
awesome.
definitely not amongst that.
Well, that's not true. You definitely broke out the biggest thing, outside of Smaug himself, who was not banned for this event. But I was a little disappointed nobody wanted to play with Smaug and 300 goblins from Goblin Town, or 300 points worth of goblins from Goblin Town.
The only reason it wasn't there was because Richie doesn't have Smaug.
Legitimately, otherwise I would have brought him. I'm hoping within the next year that Smaug will show up onto the table for me. So we will see.
I would be very okay with that because for the 1,000 point event this year was the first year, and going on will continue to be, where I have no restrictions on armies composition whatsoever. So
We have an event. We have an event here in our hometown in April where Smaug is not restricted at 800 points. So we're expecting to see him pop up.
I played him at 800 points, and he had the Witch King allied in at exactly 100, and I did win that game against him. So, to be fair, it was an objective scenario. If it had been Lords of Battles, I would have lost majorly.
Yeah, I'm excited at the prospect of playing him.
Yeah, we got 2 guys up here in our community that both have a Smaug, so we're expecting either one of them to bring it.
I used to have a Smaug. I started putting them together, and I stopped and never got back to it, and ended up selling it. And I kind of regret that I sold him, because at the time when I bought him, he was in a large lot, and I essentially got him for a third of the price in the lot that he was at the time. And now I don't think I'll ever get him again, just because the investment for that fine cast is just ridiculous.
$700 now or something like that.
Yeah. He's not worth it. I mean, there's enough good third party proxies that you can get or print that can cover for it. And as cool and thematic as he is, especially because he's the only way to get that version of Bilbo that comes with him. That you can only get the Bilbo if you buy Smaug that way. So, yeah, I can't see it. I can't see it.
I just want to get him so I can put him up on my display case and like look at his model, even if I never bring it to a tournament.
Yeah,
Just because I like the way it looks.
well, lots of folks do that too. I mean, that's why you have a lot of. It's a collecting game. It's a collecting game at the end of the day. So.
What our friend John does, he has it sitting on top of his bookshelf, just overlooking everything.
Looking down at his domain.
Pretty much.
So, all right. Well, since we're talking about armies and stuff, let's go ahead and we won't talk about. I actually played in this event as a ringer because we had a last minute dropout, but I'm not going to cover my games. They're not all that super exciting because I wasn't playing to win, obviously, as the ringer. That being said, I did go 2-1, so I feel like a bit of an asshole ringer for winning 2 of my 3 games. But at the end of the day, you can only throw things so much, I guess. But we'll go ahead and dive in and talk about Richie and Josh's list. So let's see. Let's go alphabetically. Josh, what did you bring?
So I brought Barad-Dur, and in that list I had obviously the Dark Lord himself. He had 12 Black Numenorians with him, 11 orcs with shields, 1 orc with a banner, shield, and spear. I wanted to go magic heavy for my list, so I brought in a regular ring wraith, fully kitted out, in might, will, and fate. Did not put him on a horse or anything, just to save points. He had 10 orcs with shield and 1 orc with a spear, just to fill out my numbers a little bit. And then for mobility, I brought a Black Numenorian Marshal with lance and armored horse. He had 4 Morgul Knights to ride into battle with him, and then to increase my front line of terror, I had another 4 Black Numenorians and 4 orcs with spears.
So a fully terror army with a couple of magic casters and, well, not fully terror, but a fully good front line of terror, and the baddest Maiar ever, one could argue, in Sauron.
Essentially, the 16-man line of terror definitely helps, especially with Sauron and the ring wraith -1 courage.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
And the ring wraith having 14 will to throw around, and then Sauron's regular 6 with 1 free every turn, as Joe's brother Dan can attest to, was very annoying for some people.
Yeah, this is actually interesting. So the week before I'm recording this, I actually did a recap with Joe and Dan for their channel, the LTR SPG team. So if they've got it up by the time I post this, I will leave a link. Otherwise, please go check them out. I will at least leave a link to their channel in the description. And it's funny, Josh played Dan in round 2 and Joe played against Richie in round 3. So I've heard their sides of the story. Now I get to hear it from Josh and Richie's side of the story. So,
do you want me to go over my round 1 and all that?
Well, let's go into Richie's army real quick.
Okay.
All right.
So I bought Khazad-dûm with a Lothlorien alliance. So I bought Durin with 18 Hearthguard, giving me that defense 7 +1 to wound front line. With a King's Champion, 2 Vault Warden teams, 2 regular dwarves with shields, and 2 dwarves with bows. And then a Galadriel with 18 elves, 6 of which had bows and spears, and then everybody else just had a spear to support, giving me that fight 5 backline. And then I bought the Khazad-dûm Ballista, that strength 7 shot, really keeping people at bay.
Yeah, the stone thrower. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So very good synergy because Khazad-dûm's biggest weakness is that it doesn't have spear supports. So being at 1,000 points, having that fight 5 backup really helped.
Yeah, it's a common thing that you see in the Hobbit armies with Iron Hills being backed up by Halls of Thranduil's spear wielding elves. And I was expecting to see an army like that at this event, but nobody took that. Most people took if they took Halls of Thranduil, they were allied with survivors of Lake Tau, and I think there was only like one Halls of Thranduil army that even showed up. So it was very interesting to only see um, essentially the elves being supporting dwarves from two armies that are not green allies. In Richie's case, so I was really surprised by that for a Battle of Five Armies themed event. That the one that had that elven dwarven synergy was a Lord of the Rings based army.
Yeah, I really like the strength 4 front line with that +1 to wound because you're wounding most things on like 5s at that point, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, I agree. Uh, at least fives, if not fours, if it's like defense 6, and then you're winning those fights if you roll a 6. So and then we've talked about it before outside of the video where just having those multiple banners from the King's Champion is amazing in what it can do to spread them out and really get like almost a full army, at least a full frontline banner reroll for combat.
Yeah, because if you do it right, you're basically covering 12 inches, which is, I
Exactly.
mean, when your front line is 18 inches wide, that's the majority of your fights if you're
Exactly.
doing it right.
Yeah. So, one thing I wanted to hop back real quick to Josh on me. So, Josh, all your heroes caused terror. Did we haven't talked about the games or anything yet, but did that seem to play a big factor for you? Because I know we've played before where you played an all terror army with all Black Numenorians and Morgul Knights, but having all three of your leaders, your heroes, be causing terror. Did you see your opponents try and go more for like your orc support?
Um, yes and no. So with Sauron, most people do avoid him, but once he gets stuck in, you usually have that one guy who tries to charge just to tie him down for a turn.
Yep.
The Ring Wraith always stayed behind casting spells, so no one ever really got a chance to go after him.
Smart.
And then the Black Numenorian was usually off doing his own thing, whereas round 1 it was retrieval, so he was running the flank trying to get to the objective. When I fought Dan, the Black Marshal was chasing Gandalf down, trying to keep Gandalf out of the fight.
Yeah.
And then my last round was against the Ents, so there was really nothing they could do. Um, but for example, when it came down to actual combats, uh, the first round was against Azog's Legion, so he prioritized trying to kill the Black Numenorians just to punch through me.
Right.
Dan did try to shoot behind the line to take out the spear supports with all of his shooting.
Yes, I remember him saying that. That was his priority for his shooting.
Yeah, and then there's no real strategy when you're fighting Ents. You just have to kind of run at them.
Pretty much.
To be fair, yeah. Um, so I noticed something. You guys are talking about your list, and it just dawned on me while you guys were talking about your lists. You've both brought a hero whose primary function was a support role with casting. Josh being the Ring Wraith, Richie, yours being Galadriel. Now, I'm sorry, Richie. This totally. Who was your leader? Was it Galadriel or was it Durin?
Durin was my leader. Galadriel was the supporting hero.
Okay. The Galadriel's a legend, right? Or am I remembering?
Yeah.
Galadriel's also a legend, so
Okay.
is Durin.
So did you debate a little bit about who would be the leader then? Because obviously Durin wants to be up there, and Galadriel you want to keep protected and just do the casting. Like I said, did you have the idea of making her your leader, especially because of the
Well,
fact if she took a wound, she can re-roll her fate with her ring.
Yeah, I thought about that, but there's a couple of scenarios where you need a leader with hitting power and not necessarily one that's going to sit in the back. So I kind of weighed Durin's ability to, wound other models as a bigger plus than the ability to hold and reroll fate. Because I
Fair.
mean, at the end of the day, he still is a D9 and he can reroll his fate on a 6 up, plus Galadriel can give him fate back.
Right.
So I wasn't too worried about him holding. So I took him as my leader just because, that strength 4 with a +1 to wound because of the axe, uh, just made him a more dangerous leader in my opinion.
Yeah. Okay. I can respect that. But so back to before I segued. I'm sorry. You guys both took heroes that were support heroes. So you guys are playing from more the Virginia, Richmond, Fredericksburg area. Is that more of a meta thing in your area, or is that just something that at 1,000 points you're like, hey, I can get a caster in to support my other heroes?
You can go
Honestly,
first, Richie.
I just like having a caster to support my heroes, whether it's a shadow shaman or just like a regular shaman, anything to boost up my leader is just how I like to play because I'm a goblin player and that's how you really get your point value. So I just kind of tried to do that with dwarves and elves, and it worked okay, I think.
Yeah, well, that makes sense because having you've been on the channel before, and we've had several battle reports. You having those shadow shamans it's a common part of your play style. So it's just one of those things where you're playing with your what fits your play style. Just instead of it being evil goblins, now it's good elves. So I can understand that.
Yeah, it definitely threw me through a loop, so I wanted to have something I was kind of familiar with.
Well, it worked out well for you, I would say.
Thank you.
Speaking to the meta up in our area here, magic isn't very widely used from what we see. So if you, so we're kind of the outliers in that respect, where um, me having two heavy spellcasters and Richie having one main support spellcaster doesn't happen very often.
So, what was your preference for taking a ring ray fully kitted out for casting over, say, I don't know, another Black Numenorian Marshal?
I will give credit to one of the guys up here, Tim, at our escalation series that we did last year. I had Moria. Took Richie wasn't participating, so I played Moria in his stead.
Appreciate it.
There you go. There's that friendship we were talking about.
And Tim brought Sauron with a ring wraith, and he completely shut down my dragon with sap will and whatnot.
Yep.
And that kind of gave me the inspiration to combo a ring wraith and Sauron, that where Sauron can sap the will because he only needs it on a 4-up, and then the ring wraith can go for the transfix or something the once the character is out of will. And Ian also gives me that fact, if I lose priority and Sauron gets charged by one guy, I still have an option to spellcast and go from there.
Right. That makes sense. Since help refresh my memory, and we might have to look it up real quick. Sauron has how many spells? 3?
He has quite a few, actually. I
Really?
believe he has. I have it right here next to me. Just give me
I
one
think he
second.
has 4.
Sauron has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah. He's got yeah. That makes sense because he's basically the original ring wraith.
Yeah, his casting, nothing is higher than a 4-up.
Yep.
Everything except for Instill Fear is an 18-inch range.
Yep.
So you sap will on a 4-up, and then you have the ring wraith who can transfix on a 3-up.
Yep.
Follow up, and that is your immobilize a hero. Sauron runs in and kills the hero.
So here's something that you could think about doing too. This is going to turn into a tactics talk too now. So you're talking about throwing sap will. Does Sauron get to reroll a cast like like the Witch King does with the Morgul Crown, or is it just what you roll is what you get?
No, it's what you roll is what you get, but he does get that free will every turn. So
Right.
he has 6 in his store. So usually I will spend 1 from the store and the free one just to make sure it goes off.
Yeah.
And when he runs out of will, he's generally already in the fight. So then the Ring Wraith picks up the slack from there.
Gotcha. All right, so let me run this by you and see what you, because you're talking about inspiration. I like the idea of doing the sap will on the 4+, but what if you just threw a transfix on a 2-up? Because then if it goes off and your opponent fails their resist roll, then you can turn around. You've now essentially you've achieved your initial goal with sap will, which is to force your opponent to burn will, and you've also you've transfixed them. Then you can take your wraith and have them throw another transfix, and if you get really lucky, you could essentially have 2 big heroes that your opponent has, even if they're 2 mid-tier heroes. My thought is always going with like someone like Forlong and like Huron, because those are 2 guys who are very good in combat, being strength 5 for Forlong, strength 4 with a 2-handed weapon Burly for Huron, and now you can essentially freebie with Sauron transfix that if they botch it, you could have them both sitting there for at least a turn, and now you've doubled down your stalling power, so to speak.
There are some assumptions with the strategy I said. The main thing is that it's the 18-inch range. So I'm casting the sap will long before I'm ever near them or in combat. So it's a preemptive measure to lower their will before ever getting into combat.
Right. Well, you can do the same thing with transfix too, because it's also an 18-inch range, and with the fact that it goes off on a 83% chance, they don't want their hero. If you're again a preemptive, because I play Saruman, and Saruman has 18-inch compel and transfix, and I'm reaching out there and casting that transfix long before they're near me. So even if they're resisting it, they're doing like what you want to do, which is to burn their will, so that when you get close, then they have no ability to. But if you're successful, then they have to decide, oh crap, is my hero going to sit here and be a turn behind my army, or is my army now going to have to sit here and wait a turn so that my hero can catch up or keep up?
That is viable. The other assumption would be I would only use it on a character that has 3 will.
True.
If I'm going up against an army like Isengard where all their guys have 1 will, I'm not wasting the sap will on one.
Right.
I will just transfix or something like that from a distance.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of been my thing, is like I played against Joe recently, like over I say recently, it's probably been 2 months now, where he was playing Rohan and he had a group with Aemir coming down a flank, and Saruman's just like transfix, and I just 1-diced it because he gets to re-roll his casts, and I got it on like a 5, and Joe was like, well, I don't want my Aemir to sit there I don't want his little contingent to be behind. So he went and tried to resist it, and he rolled 2 dice and got it. But then the next turn, when he came closer, he had 1 dice. He was down to 1 will and failed it. And so I had Aemir basically after turn 1 doing nothing for at least 2 or 3 turns.
Yeah. So an example of the strategy I used in the event would be against Dan.
Yeah.
Dan having a lot of shooting, he stayed back the entire time. So my 2 moves to get closer to him gave me 1 turn or 2 turns to do sap will on Bard.
Mm-hmm.
And by the second time I sapped will, the Ring Wraith was in range that I could then compel Bard to run away.
Right.
And then once Bard was out of will, and I had the Ring Wraith in range to keep compelling him away, Sauron then focused on Dan's chariot.
Right.
And then kept the chariot from ever moving.
Right. Yeah, because all you gotta do is throw 1 die at holding up that chariot. So
and then with Sauron doing a transfix Sauron doing a transfix on a 2-up
Yeah,
on the chariot, I was
yeah,
pretty much going to do it every time.
yeah. My whole thing was like, I like the idea of sap will, but I sometimes see things like a compel and a transfix that might be a 2 or a 3 compared to a 4 or 5, being able to achieve the same goal as sap will, but at a more highly at a higher success rate due to the lower requirement to get the cast to go off. So
I
that's
don't disagree.
yeah,
I don't disagree at
yeah,
all.
that's more what I was asking. It's like what so you see, yeah, okay. You see what I'm saying though?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's just I like just that one that even if it's just one turn,
Right.
just to try and get that sap will.
Yeah,
If it
yeah,
works, it works. If not, I'm still 18 inches away from you. So next turn, I will start actually
yeah.
pushing you away.
Well, and for the example that you listed specifically, playing against Dan, who had a shooting heavy army and sitting back, doing my idea of throwing a transfix is not going to do anything because what does he care? Okay, so my guy's sitting here now for a turn. Okay, I was going to sit here anyway. So in that situation, your better idea is to play the sap will, which would have a better chance of achieving your goal. Because like if I'm going to sit back and shoot at you and you just transfix my one guy, I'm not even going to resist it, and then I've failed to make you burn will, which is what you're trying to do. So
Yeah, and definitely the compel would have been the better option in that as well, because I would
right,
force Bard away from his daughters,
right,
so he would lose his bonuses and all that.
exactly, yeah. So it's situational. I think that's my thing. Is like it's situational. And playing with this Isengard like I have been in Saruman, I only have the one caster, so I've got to look at what's the best way to maximize my casting ability to mess up my opponent's battle plans. So
That is true. Getting 2 spells off in a turn is 10 times as good
yeah,
as.
yeah. I've done Mordor before with 3 casters, and let's just say, well, it was a great win for me because of the ability to just completely shut down my opponent's armies. You feel real slimy about it afterwards.
Yeah,
So
Dan looked so dejected halfway through the game because the chariot did nothing and Bard kept running away, and
yeah.
I was like, I'm sorry, Dan.
Well, I mean that's it. At the end of the day, that's what the game is you got to try and find ways to counter their pieces, and your pieces countered his pieces. So
Yeah.
but yeah, all right. So thanks for not divulging, indulging my curiosity.
No,
What
that's
you're
why we're
telling
here.
sounds like what you're telling me is I should continue to play around with spellcasters for when I come back up your way, because folks would be maybe not as prepared for my tactics.
Yeah, we generally don't have a lot of resistance to magic outside the random bear encounter or
Right.
Lothlorien.
Right.
Or the Watcher.
Right.
Watcher doesn't count.
So yeah, so rolling in, we'll just talk about each round. So 3 rounds, 2.5 hour time limit, hard time limit. Round 1 was kind of iffy. I kind of let a few games finish their turn just because of the fact that round 1 had the hour and a half lunch built into it, and if folks want to sacrifice time for their lunch, then who am I to say no if they want to finish their game? So the 3 scenarios for this event, I picked a little differently. Most events used to be the TO designated, or the TO would randomly roll from the pools. But the veto style has become very popular over the last year. Is it common in your guys' area? Because I've gone to 2 events now in your area, and it wasn't used either time.
So lately it's kind of been an off and on kind of thing. Some people have, I think the last event we just did up here, it was not there, and it was a little variety of a doubles event. So it was doubles, but it wasn't following the exact doubles rules, but it didn't have veto. It was a little just something different.
Right.
But we have a league coming up with the Merv guys down in Richmond. Vito will come back. And I think Vito's coming back for our April event as well. So we had a little break from it, and now we're going back into it.
Yeah, because the two events I played, I think the first one was Vito. Chris ran that one, and then the second one that Caleb ran, he had predetermined the scenarios already. But so I like the veto and I don't like it. It's one of those things where I like the ability to potentially get rid of a scenario that could really hurt my army. At the same time, that being said, you know, some armies have scenarios that they are predisposed to being weak against. Case in point being Goblin Town against Lords of Battle. You know, if they're playing against a shooting heavy army that could just sit back and peg them with bows all day, they're most likely going to lose Lords of Battle. So the veto does a great job of removing that from being a threat, but it also makes it now where you can kind of mitigate weaknesses, and some armies can arguably be called undefeatable now because of that. Of course,
Well, I mean, Goblin Town could still do like storm the camp, and then you could remove that from them, so you don't have to worry about goblins spawning into your camp.
yeah. Well, but another scenario that's in that pool, I believe, it might not be that one. Yeah, I think it's that one. So you get rid of storm the camp, but you don't remove reconnoiter. So now they can just pop up on the board and then turn around and walk right back off. And
There was a FAQ for that.
oh, is there?
Yes, it's inside. I think it's actually in the reconnoiter FAQ that says any army that spawns on a board edge must come from the player's side. So that has been nerfed quite a bit.
Okay, well that's a good thing that they recognize that based off of the way. I mean, and that probably came out before the veto system. So
Yeah.
that must just be one that I've forgotten, because there's like what 60,000 pages worth of FAQs now.
Oh yeah, there's tons.
Yeah,
An insane amount.
exactly.
Yeah, we were actually just got her hands on a Goblin Town army, and when we were, no, it wasn't Ashley. It was when me and Richie were playing with his sister,
Mm-hmm.
and that they reconnoiter popped up, and one of the guys we were playing with showed us the FAQ, and so that rule is changed.
Oh, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back. I know the latest FAQs came out like a couple days before we're recording right now, so I'll have to go and reread it, and I'll pay attention to that. It's probably in the match play guide then, specifically.
I believe so.
Yeah. But anyway, back to how I did it. So this one was a little different. I went ahead and did a hybrid way of selecting scenarios. And I've listed off the 3 ways that scenarios have been decided in the past for events. That is, the TO decides, the TO randomly rolls, and veto. So in a 3-round event, I incorporated that in all 3 rounds. So the first round, I picked the scenario. The second round, I had it randomly rolled for based off of the other 3 pools that were not used at that point. And then the fourth one, I let be veto, or I'm sorry, the third round was veto style. So the first round, I picked retrieval. The second round, I let my wife. So you guys, I said it at the event, you guys all had to blame her, but she rolled for the pool and for the scenario, and it ended up being Lords of Battle. And then round 3 was veto, and it was the unique scenario pool, which is Assassination, Ill Met by Moonlight, and Fog of War. So let's go ahead and discuss how you guys' round 1 went. I think I did Josh first last time. Richie, you want to go first this time?
Sure. So
He's like, yeah.
round 1, yeah. Round 1 was a blast and a half. I actually got to fight an army that I have wanted to since I started the game, and I got to fight the Ents. The army was beautifully painted, and I believe he actually won best painted.
He did.
And so I had a bunch of dwarves and elves fighting strength 8, defense 8 Ents on retrieval. So no one was getting anywhere fast. And we ended up kind of colliding into the middle, which was a lot of fun because, you know, my defense 7 against his defense 8. So I was wounding him on 5s, he was wounding me on 4s or 5, something like that.
Ridiculously low.
Yeah. And the games were just comical because the match was comical because, you know, my centerpiece was really Galadriel, and her whole thing is to compel and command. And the Ents have a special thing in their profile that's like, don't be hasty, so I couldn't do any of that to them.
Yep. Yep.
So, so that really put a wrench in my gears. But the fact that the Hearth Guard were fearless, so I could just charge them in on the Ents really helped. Um, but the Ents player really did a good job. I mean, he would pick up Durin and then just start using Durin to beat my other models to death, which was funny. But I was able to get the victory off simply by getting the King's Champion around the board edge and then handing off the item to get it off the board with some elves. So, um, but it really just came down to dice rolls, considering he had the higher fight, and when he ran out of might is when things finally started to push in my favor to chop down some trees with angry dwarves.
I think it's funny. So you probably, I know you probably practiced against Josh a bit with his Terra heavy army, and then you go and play a guy who is all Ant army, which all his guys all cause terror, and you have all these guys with bodyguard to help mitigate that. He was probably just like, great, my big advantage, and you squash it.
Pretty much, because he was having a hard time breaking through the defense with his strength 8 on my defense 7. I had fearless, so I could just charge in on him, which really helped. And then the fact that I had 2 Vault Warden teams, so I could just put a Vault Warden team on an Ent, and then they couldn't do any monstrous attacks on the shield guy as long as he was supported correctly. So
Yep.
I really had all the perfect tools to shut down the Ents. I even had Blinding Light channeled with Galadriel, so the bolters and the stone throws were only hitting on a 6 up. So I really had the advantage in that fight.
Well,
Not to mention with Durin's Warhorn, you were Courage 5, so you only need 5s to charge the Ent anyway with the Vault Wardens.
Yeah, which I
Right,
mean,
yeah.
50% of the time I'm getting that,
yeah.
maybe a little more.
So it's. I think it's funny. So I said that they're wounding you on a low. I mean low by dwarf standards, because strength 8 on 7 is a 4. And so you're saying he was having a hard time pushing through that. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, because I was able to get, 4 or 5 dwarves on each of the ends and kind of bottleneck them up in the center of the
Right.
board. And because I sent the King's Champion around with 2 Vault Warden teams, it really made him split up his forces, which is even harder to do with the Ents, because
Yeah.
the whole thing is if you hurl the model and it hits another Ent, all your guys get knocked down,
Yeah.
and so they auto win that fight. But it once he started getting that synergy off is how I actually ended up getting Durin killed. Treebeard, stomped Durin, but before he started to get that synergy and commit everything into one fight, I had a Ent go down like turn 3, I think. So
Yeah, I'm not surprised, because even with them being defense 8, your guys are wounding them on 5s with the +1
Yeah.
to wound. So and yeah, the Ents are scary, but you had 50 something models and he had 9, 2 of them being Merry and Pippin riding shotgun with Treebeard. So those are big bases. He can take up a lot of space, but you can push through.
honestly, Merry and Pippin did some work in that game, surprisingly, because they kept throwing stones and they were aiming at Galadriel even with Blinding Light on, because she's only defense 3 because she's Lady of Light. So they kept pulling Fate off of Galadriel to try to get rid of her. So,
Yeah, because
like,
those throw stones are their strength 2 or strength 1.
yeah, I think they're like strength. I think they're only like strength 1, but
Yeah.
I had to keep using her spell casting to give her more Fate back.
Yeah, well, I mean, 1 or 2 that with both wounds on 5s. So I guess it's a
Yeah.
good thing she wasn't your leader for that game then.
Yeah, I was happy she wasn't, because I was burning through some Fate really quickly.
That's hilarious. So what you're
Yeah.
saying is Merry and Pippin are just as annoying in the game as they are in the movies.
Pretty
Specifically
much.
Pippin.
Like I I think
Don't bash
the
Pippin like that.
Hey, I love
yeah.
Pippin. I did a whole video on why Pippin is the true hero of the Lord of the Rings trilogy and not Frodo, as we all like to assume.
I think
No,
Sam
we
is the
assume
true
Sam
hero.
is. Yeah.
No, Sam's the unsung hero, but the face of the franchise is like, besides Aragorn, is Frodo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you in your video.
I I think Merry and Pippin are just there to annoy Maya because they annoy the hell out of Gandalf, and now they're annoying the hell out of Galadriel. Like, who's next? You know,
Well, and then they're over there smoking Treebeard's long lost relatives and pipe weed.
pretty much.
And
You know
there's a
what?
whole
They
theory
didn't even
behind.
have to destroy the ring.
Yeah, and there's a whole theory out there that says that the Ents are actually Maiar in disguise. So you could continue going down there.
Just send Merry and Pippin with a couple of stones up against Sauron, and you're good to go. You know, hey.
There you go. So resounding victory for you. It sounds like round one.
Yeah, I got a 12-0. He almost got to the objective, but I was able to send my ballista crew, which did nothing the entire game to block things up at the last moment.
Oh wow,
So I was able to deny victory points there and come out with a major victory.
nice.
So,
Josh.
but definitely a fun match.
So what you're
All
saying
right.
is you're okay playing Ents again.
Oh yeah, I would love it. Like honestly, next time I want to bring Warrior against them and just watch goblins get smushed all day. Like I would definitely play them.
That's hilarious.
Ents were my round 3, and I can agree with Richie that Sauron going up against a bunch of trees was probably the highlight, fun moment of the event. But we'll get to that.
So how did your round one go? Because I know that was not the highlight.
It wasn't bad. It was the Battle of the Joshes. So it was me versus the other Josh at the event.
Josh Brown.
And yeah, he brought the Azog's Legion with a signal tower.
There can only be one.
Well, he did win. It was a minor loss, only by 1 point, and it was a matter of 2 inches that decided the game.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we started off pretty close to each other. He had Azog's Legion with the signal tower. He placed the signal tower back toward his objective to play defense. Sauron and the Ring Wraith faced forward against his army, and then I had the Marshal run the side to try and get back toward the objective. Magic did pretty well, shut down Azog for a few turns. A cheeky Chill Soul got 1 wound off of Azog. Another cheeky, well-placed Hurl knocked Azog off the Warg and wounded him again. His half trolls, oh, can't remember exactly what they're called, Berserker or whatever guys.
Oh, the Gundabad Berserkers?
Yeah,
The ones that have 2 attacks?
those the -1 courage to them really didn't stop the terror, and they chewed through quite a few Black Numenorians. He was able to push with his Goblin mercenaries. He popped them up right near the objective and was able to grab it. My Ring Wraith and a few guys were able to hold them for a while.
That's
Sauron
bold.
Sauron did get trapped at one point, and my opponent decided not to might the final wound that would kill him, air quotes. And instead he used that might for a move later on. Sauron did eventually kill the White Warg and then killed Azog.
Wow, okay.
Me helping my opponent in a way. Josh thought that the board was the traditional halfway 24-inch your board edge. It was not the diagonal one, which it actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And he was measuring to run his guy as if he was going to pass the middle mark and get the point. I corrected him and I showed him that it's not there, it's actually over here. And that movement gave him just enough 2 inches to get over the line, which gave him the 1 point
Oh,
to win the game.
Josh,
Yes.
Josh. So what you're saying is, if you had been,
If I was not a nice guy,
if you had not had sportsmanship, you would have won the game.
he would have continued running in a straight line instead of turning, and he
Yeah.
would not have crossed the line.
Yeah, because your game. I mean, I got the score. I got the tables pulled up. I mean, I think it's 8-7 or no 7-6 or something like that. And
Yeah, it was 1 point deciding it.
yeah, and I was like, geez, this is a close game. So that's crazy.
He was able to get his objective back onto his board side. I was able to grab the objective and move it toward the edge.
Yeah.
I
I
killed his leader. He wounded mine. We were both broken by the end. So it was very close.
Wow. Yeah, so I'm sitting here trying to do the mental math. Like, I don't remember. Hold on, I can pull it up.
I'm pulling mine up as well.
That's like super close. Like, because usually the scenarios where killing the leader gets you a significant amount of points, but I think this is one of those ones that only gets you.
I believe that's why he saved the point. Yeah, if I remember correctly, it's only 1 point for wound or kill.
Yeah, well, it's 1 and 2. So
1 and 2. So
yeah.
he knew that Sauron got the 2-up fate save, and I
Yeah.
still had 1 might, so I was not dying at that point.
Right. And
he saved his might.
And he had you below that threshold, so you could be broken then.
Yes, I was considered broken, but I broke him as well, so we both got the 1 point there.
Yeah, and so him having it on your side is 5, you having it is 3.
And then I had the 1 extra point for killing the leader.
Yep, and then that doesn't make up the difference in the 2. So, oh, dude.
Yeah, it was super close fight.
Damn, man. Well, I'll tip my hat. I usually do a sportsmanship award, but I found that it's kind of hard to do a sportsmanship award because most people vote for who they play against, and if you do it after round 2, you've only played against 2 people, so you get this very wide distribution of votes, and nobody actually truly wins. And then I tried doing it based off of TO's choice for sportsmanship, and one time I did that, it was very clear because the player that I gave it to, they were fighting a very new player. And they essentially cost themselves the game. They instructed the new player on how to beat them, and then he did it and was successful. And like all the dice rolls went in his because I was watching. He was like, if you do this, this could happen, and then say this is how you could win. He's like, oh, okay. And then they rolled and it went out, and the guy who was instructing just rolled absolute dog crap, and the other kid just rolled super hot and won the game. And I was like, well, that sucks. So, I mean, it's just basically the exact same situation as you. He gave advice that cost him the game. You gave advice that cost you the game. So, I mean, that's one of the moments where it's like, this is what the spirit of the game is supposed to be in. So I really tip my hat on that one, Josh.
I didn't feel like it would have been right to watch him make a mistake. I don't do it every time. I do notice my opponent make a mistake, and then I will not correct them just because it's not a major issue, but when that is a game, I see you measuring,
and
I see you marking with dice where you think you have to go. I'm not going to let you just not understand the core mechanic of the scenario.
Yeah. Well, I mean, kudos, man. I really tip my hat to that. So that's awesome. Which I expect no less, because you and Richie are both like top of the line guys.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
This was my second time playing Josh. He had essentially the same army, except he had a troll last time I fought him.
Yep.
And this time went a lot better, a lot smoother, because the first time I ever played him, that was the first time I had ever seen the signal tower, and it is a shock and awe item.
It really is. It really is.
So knowing what I was experiencing and what I was facing, I was like, all right, I know how to do this, and it was a lot closer than the first time we played.
Who do you think has the bigger intimidation factor, that signal tower or Sauron?
Oh, that's signal tower.
Yeah. It is pretty gnarly.
To be fair,
it's like what, 200 points, and you get 10, or like you don't get 10, you get like 6 captains on it.
Yeah, I think it's 6 or 7. It's just some crazy amount.
The banner effects are what get me. Like I can't even shadow all of that.
No.
Banner effects, the horn, it is, and the fact that it doesn't have a specific model. It has a few dimension requirements, and he has a beautiful model for it. It is beautiful scenery, and that hitting the table, it throws you off completely.
Yeah, we actually had a very lengthy discussion before the event on how it needed to be because he had used it, like you said, the first time, and it gave me a shock and awe factor as a TO. Like I didn't know how to handle it, and it ended up displacing my terrain, and he was putting it on top of objective markers and stuff, and at the time it's like, well, what can I do? I don't have a baseline to go off of for this, so he had signed up for the event, messaged me, he's like, hey, I'm going to bring it out again. He's like, is there any changes that I need to be aware of from 2 years ago? And we discussed it and talked about it, and he had actually gone out of his way to try and purchase a 3D printed one that fit the dimensions that I required for it. Well, the 3D printed one got lost in the mail, naturally. And so he messaged me the day before he was driving down, and he's like, hey, it's not here. What do I do? And I was like, bring the other one. I was like, bring it, but you cannot displace terrain, and you can't sit it on top of objectives, because that was the thing that really did it. Because I think he played against you, Josh, and it was an objective scenario, and he sat it on top of the objective.
We played retrieval.
No.
So
the first time.
That was the first time. I played him twice in retrieval.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, hell.
Like he lost that game from round 1 because he just dropped the tower on retrieval.
He put the tower on, and then I could not get guys close enough to my own objective to stop him by the time a warbat got over to it to grab it and then run off with it.
Right.
Yeah, that was the frustrating first fight, but he is very sportsman. He's a good sportsman in how he handled it. So.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I told him, I was like, look, there's going to be an objective scenario. It's not going to be a capture and control or domination, so you're not going to have to try and avoid a bunch of them. It's still an objective. Just don't put it on top of it. And that was my only stipulation. I said, if there's absolutely no place where you can get it on my boards because of the terrain, then I will come over and move it to accommodate for it. But otherwise, you have to fit it in how the boards are set, and don't set. And he did it. I mean,
yeah, he did very good.
I didn't hear any complaints from anybody. I mean, there was one round 3. It was like, how am I supposed to deal with this thing? It's in the way. It's in the middle of the board. I was like, well,
yeah.
He followed the stipulations. My stipulations were don't move terrain. It is what it is. But,
yeah, I witnessed that match, and I told the guy at the end, I was like, that you acted essentially how I felt the very first time I played it. It is a shock factor.
Yeah.
How do you do this? It changed the entire dynamic of the game.
Yes.
Which, I mean, that is what certain models do. Sauron can do that.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to say is, like, if you think about it, the only way to take that tower is with Azog. And Azog fully kitted out with the White Warg and his heavy armor and the Signet Tower. He's more expensive than Sauron. He's over 400 points. So, I mean, essentially, he's just taking something that's a bigger shock and awe than what Sauron is.
Yeah, and it was a interesting matchup having Sauron go up against Azog with the tower, because you got to see that point equilibrium and what happened. Once Azog was taken care of, the tower meant nothing to me.
Right.
Sauron just started walking toward it with his army, going, okay, you have 7 captains. I have Sauron. Let's go.
Minor captains, too, because they only have, like, 111.
Yeah.
So that's actually really bold, though. So he was able to get it with his the objective with his mercenaries. Did you try? I'm gonna assume you tried to stop him after he popped them out to go after it.
I left. I put the ring wraith with his 10 orc shields off to the side to essentially as a middle ground. I left some back, some went forward to bolster the line.
Right.
And then the Ring Wraith, I kept him in between casting magic and just waiting for him. Once he dropped the Goblin mercenaries, I had a few guys that were already in a full circle around the objective. And then I had them holding it while I rushed guys back with the Ring Wraith to
Reinforce the
do
lines,
their best to
basically.
hold it
Yeah.
off.
So did the ring wraith die?
It did eventually die. Once
Okay.
he was completely out of will, he had one will left. I couldn't cast any more spells. So he was kind of just being a body with terror.
Yeah.
And after the objective got past him, there wasn't really anything for him to do. So one guy eventually charged him, taking off the last will, and he ran away.
Like,
But
poof, yeah. Did you try to compel the relic carrier at any point to drop it? Or
by the time he actually picked it up, I was out of will.
okay, I gotcha.
The last will I had was to transfix the last guy
Okay.
that could grab it. So I stalled it for a turn, but at that point I had nothing
Yeah.
else to throw at it.
Well, that's really impressive then, that not only was he able to essentially push you all the way to what could be a breaking point by removing all of your defense force and the ring wraith, but then also have still enough time left in the game to get the relic back to his side of the field. Because it's not a short distance from the midpoint, even as it's at a diagonal.
It's not. We rolled it about... I think we rolled that ends on a 1 or a 2, 3 or 4 times, and it never ended.
Wow.
Which I'm kind of glad it didn't, because I had not reached the objective or moved it until the last turn.
Okay.
So if it had ended sooner, it would have been a much more skewed way in his favor, I believe.
Yeah, okay.
But like the last turn or two was where I got the objective and I started running it back, and then I moved it once, I think, and then the turn ended and the game ended.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, it sounds like you guys both had really good round ones. One win, one that could have been a win, but sportsmanship trumps victory at the end of the day, which is awesome. I mean, what'd you guys think? Do you guys like a retrieval as a scenario? This was the one I picked.
If you have mobility, I don't mind it. If you don't have mobility, oh my goodness, it is a rough.
Richie, you had no mobility. What'd you think?
So I actually liked it because
Well, his doesn't count. He had 6 guys he was going up against. He could run around them.
7. There were 7, and they're on 60 mil bases, so they take a lot of space.
So I actually liked it because I was daisy chaining the relic off the edge, so I had everybody pre-measured out. So like a dwarf had it, he would run it the 5 inches and pass it to an elf, and then the elf would move a 6, then wait next turn, and then move again and get it off. So I was really using the elves for that extra inch of movement, and trying to keep them with the dwarves, because by moving forward, handing it off, and essentially going to the end of the next model's movement, it gave me anywhere between a 10 and 11 inch range. So even though I didn't have anything fast moving, because I had the higher model count to such a point, I enjoyed the scenario. Personally, I enjoy the scenario even when I don't have anything fast moving, because when I'm not running dwarves, I'm running goblins. So
right. Well, I figured. So I wanted to have in an event that's only like 3 rounds. You kind of have this. A good TO will have a good mix of scenarios, and that's usually a objective scenario like a capture and control or a domination or a breakthrough, and then they'll have a killing scenario like Lords of Battle, which is what this one ended up being, and then they'll just have that random third one, which is a unique one. Sometimes it's something like Reconnoiter or Storm the Camp or Ill Met by Moonlight, Fog of War. So I wanted to maintain that, but I didn't want to have the typical capture and control, domination, and breakthrough. I feel like those 3 scenarios, while they are fun, they're just repetitive. You just see them so much at events that it's like, I want something a little different. And I've seen Divide and Conquer, and Divide and Conquer is not. I like that scenario. It's the one where you have the three objectives that are spread out on the center line, and you deploy in alternating corners, and then have to move to the center. Like I like that scenario, but it's a lot of movement involved. Where this one, Retrieval, is almost a 50% deployment rate because you can deploy almost right on the center line. You just have to be 3 inches back. So
Yeah.
I wanted something that was objective based, had some movement requirement, but didn't have an entire game's worth of movement because you're coming from the board edges.
Well, and not just that, we were letting 1,000 points, so moving that many models,
Exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
it can eat up the clock relatively quick.
Yeah. Well, and that's
I-
something I put in. Sorry, Josh. That
You're good.
you had a 10-minute counter to move, but it was one of those things where I wasn't going to enforce it unless somebody called for it, which there was one guy that I found out was doing that, and he wasn't even doing it right. He was only giving his opponent 5 minutes to move, which means he didn't read the imagine that somebody didn't read the event packet.
No.
That's a side joke, but it specifically said each player had 10 minutes to move during the movement phase. So if you're not going to put any army restrictions like an artificial model cap at 1,000 points, you have to have something in there to prevent slow play, which, you know, the 10-minute timer was my slow play counter.
Well, and what we did at the tables I played at is like, once somebody started moving a section, and like on like the left side of the board, if they were done moving out that section, you know, I'd ask them, hey, do you mind if I start countering on this side because I already know where you're going? And they're like, yeah. And then they do the same. So even, you know, though they were still moving the other half of their army, half of it was already set. So I'm gonna go ahead and get my models moving. That way we can get to the fun part and start throwing the dice.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a good way. You know, probably the top end events like Articon and, you know, Nova, that they're probably going to be like, no, you wait till I'm done. But, you know, this is not that. I have no aspirations to ever want to be like that for any of my events. So it's good that most folks were doing it that way. And that they're just like, yeah, it's cool. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, we're here to throw dice.
Yeah. Josh,
My
you were going
note
to say
for-
something. Sorry.
Yeah, my note for Retrieval was, yeah, I say it's rough, but it is a nice middle ground when it comes to the other scenarios for objectives, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it can be rough is it can almost have that storm the camp kind of feel where it takes forever to get to your opponent's side and then you have to run it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that the running it back, I think, is the hardest part of that scenario.
Right.
But as we actually discussed Richie's strategy in the car on the drive down of, you know, getting that handoff and then multiple runs.
Yeah, you talking about that in the call with me definitely helped because that if it wasn't for being able to hand it off or remembering that I could hand it off like that, there's no way those dwarves would have made it off the board edge with that item, not with a 5-inch move, because I don't have march or anything in my army, and I've got no real mobility past my 5-6 inch move, you know.
That one handoff a turn is pretty much the only way outside of Cav to run that scenario.
Yeah.
Because unless you have something that can really push it with a drum or something,
Yeah.
you got to get that one handoff to push that 10 to 11 inches.
Yeah. Because it's honestly it's that initial movement, the turn after you pick it up, where okay, I need to move this as much as possible. That way, on the subsequent turns from there, if something doesn't go my way with a roll off for priority or something, you still have another turn or two, hopefully, to mitigate, you know, a bad 50-50 roll or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's a fun scenario. I will say I've played it a few times here recently, and I actually find it to be one of my favorite scenarios just because of the fact that there are multiple points to it. Like, not only do you have to go onto your opponent, you have to push your way, you have to break your way through your opponent's side of the board. And it's not like Storm the Camp where you're moving and counter moving from a distance to try and make it look like you're going to do one thing. No. You're only 6 inches apart. A Cav heavy army is going to charge round one.
Yeah.
And then after you grab it, okay, now what's my plan to get back? We call it capture the flag because that's basically what it is.
It is, yeah.
So that's round one. Round one, we have a win, and we have a small loss.
Yep.
A moral victory.
I was gonna say it's a moral loss, or not a moral loss. It's a loss, but morally you won.
Yeah, I think you did the right thing there, Josh. And the other Josh you were fighting was definitely a skilled player.
Yes.
And so the fact that yes, you did lose, but it was that close of a game,
Yeah,
just speaks to your character. Because I know that was hard fought either way.
yeah, guys, y'all. If you see Josh, go give him a handshake. He deserves it. So moving on, round two, we had Lords of Battle. So Josh, you want to go first?
Sure. Mine was against Dan, who had the survivors of Lake Town with a dwarven Iron Hills chariot. I started up on the center line. He deployed far back to maximize his shooting and spell casting.
Surprise.
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, my strategy was to keep Bard out of the fight as long as possible and to lock down that chariot. Apparently Dan had discussed a strategy with you using Gandalf to do something with the chariot.
Yes.
If you want to elaborate on that one.
I'm trying to remember what Gandalf had. He has one of the spells that... Oh, I can't remember what it is. Let me
I'm
see.
pulling them up here in a second.
Yeah, and it's Gandalf the Grey from Hobbit, which I think his spells are maybe a little bit different.
Yeah, I got it right here. He has, I believe it was the Protection of the Valar.
Yeah, and I think that gives you the ability... I don't remember what Protection of the Valar does now. I think it gives you the ability to have like extra dice for resisting spells. Let me see.
Okay.
But because the weakness of the Iron Hills chariot is the fact that if you can compel if you have magic heavy, which you did, even if you just have one magic user, as I found out playing Iron Hills, after the first transfix or whatever, it doesn't do anything because you can just transfix the chariot driver at will. And the chariot sits there, and the whole big thing that's the terror factor of the chariot is the impact hits, those 3 strength 6 impact hits. So if it's not moving, then the only thing it's really good for is its D6 crossbow shots, and then in combat, you don't even have to charge it then. So it can be a huge point sink, which for him, it's a quarter of his army, I think. With the captain, it's like 250. So it's a quarter of his army just sitting there doing nothing. And he's like, well, how can I affect it so that I don't have to worry about it? And I think Joe actually pointed it out. And then Dan he's like, hey, yeah, I can put Protection of the Valor. So, all right, I got it pulled up. It says, so this power may target the caster, a single friendly model within 3 inches. The target may not be targeted by enemy magical powers or special rules. So that's what he was going to try and do, is Protection of the Valor. And it's a temporary, so it's only for 1 turn. His idea, I think, was to put it on the chariot every single turn from there once you guys got close to combat, so you couldn't prevent him from moving,
Yeah. I know he won priority that first turn, and he did try it, and he rolled Snake Eyes, which was rough.
Well, and I don't even see why he tried to do it first turn then, if his whole idea is to sit back and shoot.
It wasn't. I think he just wanted it just in case I tried to do a chill soul on the driver or something like that, just so. Because I did chill soul the guy on the gun.
Okay.
1 turn, so he had no shooting. 1 turn.
Right.
So I think he was just trying it out, and it failed. And then after that, I think I either won priority or I called the move to then get the magic to go off on it, so he never really had a chance
to
cast it after that.
Yeah, because that's the thing is if you're not casting first, then it's absolutely useless. So yeah, I guess I could see why he tried to do that turn 1. But yeah, that was his kind of game plan, was to try and protect it. I don't know if he realized it was only a temporary so it only lasts for 1 turn.
I didn't know what it did for sure. So.
Yeah, and hell, he brought it up, and I'm like, what does that do? And Joe told me. I was like, oh, that's actually really good. So, because I mean, I put the matchups out for round 2, and you guys didn't go anywhere. I don't know how or why he. Oh yeah, you guys all stayed. So you saw the matchups right away, and that's why he was like instantly game planning with Joe on what they both were gonna do. So.
Yeah, but I had the Black Marshals, Warband, and a few extra guys charge Gandalf. So by turn 3, Gandalf had a guy in his face. That was equal fight.
Yep.
So he wasn't really casting any more spells. After I was able to compel and get the will off of Bard, the Ring Wraith could focus on him and just keep him away if need be, and then Sauron just went to town killing guys. Dan definitely had the lead on wounds just from his shooting and me trying to get into combat.
Yeah, he said that. I remember that much.
Yeah, it was he was leading me by probably 8 wounds a turn for a good while.
Dang.
And then it was probably the last 2 turns, Sauron and a few of my guys really just started going to town and chipping through him like crazy. And the last round, I pushed past him, and then the game ended, giving me the lead on that points.
So pretty close to the end there, sounds like.
It was as most games do, especially the really fun ones. It came down to the last turn.
Yeah.
But I can't remember. I think I had wounded Bard once. Sauron was untouched.
So I have it.
I was not broken. He was broken.
Yeah, I have it as a 6-0, which would make sense that if you had more kills, that'd be 3. And I think breaking and unbroken is a 3-1 for that as well.
So maybe I didn't touch Bard, because then if I broke him and I was not broken, so that would have been the 6 points there.
Okay. Yeah, because
I did kill Bard's horse once, I think.
Right.
But other than that, I don't think I got to Bard.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a breaking unbroken is 3. So okay, but I mean that's a big win. 6-0. That's a major.
I did try for a sneaky chill soul on one of the daughters just to try and draw Bard out.
Right, because then you have to charge you.
But I rolled a 2, and I didn't have any money to light it up. So I was like, oh well, I tried.
That would have probably ended Dan's whole day. He'd have just been like, I'm done.
Dan literally let out a sigh of relief when I rolled that 2. He was like, thank God.
It's already going bad.
Because Bard was within 6 inches of Sauron.
Right.
When I went for it. And I had broken through his line. His line was essentially split in half. And Sauron was in the middle there. So Bard would have had to have gone straight at him.
And then probably gotten surrounded if you've broken through. So that's that's pretty cheeky for you and pretty lucky for him that it didn't go off.
Yeah, but all around it was a very good match. I know if the chariot if my magic hadn't stopped that chariot, he would have ran right through my guys. There was no stopping that thing. I felt bad, but it was the only way I could have pulled out a win.
Well, and I know it's like we talked about for the first 2 games. Is like that's why you bring things. Your big pieces are supposed to mitigate their big pieces. So, I mean, like I said, the chariot's a quarter of his army. You know, Sauron's 40% of your army, yeah, but you essentially were using 50% of your army because you tag team.
I had 510 points.
Yeah,
that were just doing most of the work.
Yeah, so I mean, you've used double that for his, and then Gandalf is his other big caster or other big piece. You know, Bard is good, but he needs a lot of support in order to become really good. He needs his daughters and his horse and all that to become that really good fight 6 hero that you want him to be.
Yeah, I think it shook Dan a little bit with how much magic I threw at Bard for a while, because even when there were openings, he didn't throw Bard in. He still tried to keep him away from Sauron.
Yeah.
So Bard being nullified for most of the fight, the chariot being nullified, and Gandalf being nullified. It was just my army versus
Yeah.
little
Well,
humans that are 5 points.
and to think about it too, his other big thing that he has is he's got Bilbo, but you have Sauron. So his big
Yeah.
thing for that army is to partner Bilbo with Bard, and that's probably why he never sent Bard. I mean, for two reasons. A, Sauron's a monster, so you could rend Bard, and you're probably wounding him on 3s, because I think Sauron's what, strength 8?
Yeah.
So he's defense 5 or 6. Either way, that's more than 2 above. So if he loses a single fight, you rend Bard, and it's very likely you could kill Bard in the first in one turn of combat.
We'll say Bilbo. I did charge Bilbo with Sauron, and he barely survived. He survived on 1 wound.
Dang.
And after that, I lost priority, and Bilbo ran for his life.
4 inches and away. But yeah, I mean, so your army was almost a hard counter for what he usually likes to do. You had the magic to counter his single magic, and then you had the ring to counter his other trick, which is the ring partnered up with what do you call it? With Bard. So we don't play a whole lot of Magic. That's why I was kind of curious when I was asking about like the meta. Like like I said, I've been dabbling with Saruman, and I really like what Saruman can do, and I'm really trying to find more armies that I can bring Magic with, because I actually really enjoy it. Yeah, it can be frustrating for my opponent, but it can do a lot of great things for me. Of course, it can also be frustrating when you're hoping something goes off and you roll Snake Eyes to cast.
A little sneak peek for round 3. My Ring Wraith used Black Dart 14 times, and not a single one went off.
Oh, jeez.
It went off, but then I rolled a 2 to wound.
Yeah, okay. So that's kind of how my round 2 and 3 went for my own games, because I played against Mordor in my Ringer games round 2 and 3, and my opponents both had budget wraiths like you did for casting, basically doing what you're doing. Like they were supporting Kardouche, and they would do like we talked about, do a transfix or a compel or something to make me burn Will, and then he would fireball to try and get that cheeky strength 6. And then there was a couple times in the game, in both of the games, where they'd cast Black Dart and it'd go off, and then they'd roll a wound and they'd roll a 1 or a 2. And it's just like, damn, something like that where you have a really good chance of wounding and it absolutely botches it.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty much my round 2.
So you're sitting on a major and a minor loss at that point.
Yeah.
Richie, how'd yours go?
So I got to fight Army of Thor and paired with Guaha. So basically we're both D7 in the front line, but where I have like a +1 to wound, he has throwing weapons. And my
you have
shooting
bodyguard.
Say again?
And you have bodyguard too.
And I have bodyguard, yes. I got blinding light channeled to go off, so all of his throwing weapons were wounding or hitting on 6s, because I had everybody bubbled up,
Right.
so Galadriel was touching the front line, which was nice, for the most part. And I had my ballista perfectly lined up, so round 1 I shot at Guaha and hit. I didn't wound, but it was enough to scare the giant eagle into submission for a few turns.
That's awesome.
Which I am happy for.
So did you hit dead on?
That,
Sorry, you hit him. Did you hit him dead on then? That means with your scatter?
oh yeah, I hit him dead on with the 6.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So like round 1 the ballista did nothing the entire game, so when round 2 came around and turn 1 happened and I shot Guaha, it was a good feeling. It didn't do anything again, but it was still enough to keep a big piece of his army back. which gave the elves and my two dwarf bows time to shoot. And I was able to pick off a couple of models early, which really helped. And then once the lines collided, I just kept getting priority, so his throwing weapons didn't really have time to get to come off. And because I was strength 4 on his defense 7 with a +1 to wound, I was wounding him easier than he was wounding me.
Yep.
And then by the time that Guahu came out of hiding, Lady Galadriel kept compelling him and commanding him, and he only has 2 will. So she was really able to shut him down until like the second or third to last turn. And by then I had a couple of elves that were able to charge in and just keep him at bay because he tried to swarm Lady Galadriel. I will say that, funny enough, that once I quit targeting Guahu with the ballista, I ended up shooting one of his dwarves and knocked it back 5 inches, didn't kill him, and then he finally gets into the fight after the rest of the army and shot him off of the rock as soon as he got into the fight, and that dwarf ended up dying before he did anything. So he got shot by the ballista twice. But the King's Champion really was just the perfect tar pit in that entire fight, because he was tying up Thrain, and Thrain just did not do anything for him. His heroes were not able to really cut through my line, and I was cutting through him a lot faster than he was me, because that +1 to wound, but I also had the higher fight value with the elves. So wound tally, I think it ended up being like I had like 32 wounds to his like 10 or 11.
Good lord.
So yeah, like I barely lost any models. The majority of the wounds that I had was all on fate, and then Galadriel just kept giving it back with the blessing of the Valor. And I did a really good job of just keeping her centrally located, so when I did have to burn might on the King's Champion or Durin, they were just using that might to get more kills, and Galadriel was calling the moves. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better match, in all honesty.
So you had everything go your way.
I really did. Like he would roll a 6, and then I would roll a 6. It was just a good match for me, in all honesty.
Yeah, and with your elven supports, you were just like we were talking about before we started. That elven support, you roll a 6, you've just won because of your fight value, and then you've got a better chance of wounding with the +1, even with his defense 7. It's starting to mitigate it.
Yeah, and like I said, he had a couple of heroes. Wahud, I think, got like 2 kills the entire game because Galadriel shut him down.
Yeah.
And then his actual
Guahir has 3 will, by the way. Just wanted to make it
3
clear.
will. My
Yeah.
apologies.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't take
and
much to shut down a 3 will hero if you get a few really successful casting rolls, because then they're forced to spend more will than they want to resist.
Yeah, I was rolling like 4s and 5s, and his rolls just weren't there. He did everything right. His rolls were just not there, sadly.
So you were playing against me, essentially.
Pretty much. We went through an entire round of combat, I think, after turn 4, and he rolled every single one of his combats and did not roll above a 4.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I know how that feels. That's always fun. That's always fun.
We shook hands at the end of it, and I even told him, dude, you did everything right. You just couldn't get the dice to go your way. So he said he was gonna buy new dice after that round.
Well, I mean, there were 3 dice cubes that I'm sure he probably went and bought a couple tickets for.
Oh, we did. We were laughing about that.
Well, so I think it's funny. I just wanted to comment. So you played against the Ents round 1, right?
Correct.
That was Zach, and then you played against Thorin round 2, or I'm sorry, Thror with Guahir here in round 2. That's also Zach. So you played both of the Zachs.
I did.
So we had a Josh battle between Josh Parrish and Josh Brown, and then we had Richie over here just beating up anybody whose name is Zach.
I had a score to settle, apparently.
What person named Zach has wronged you in your life, I wonder?
Nobody that I can think of.
Well, you added 2 names to the tally at least.
There you go.
So
Now to
I got you.
add a third.
Right. So I got you. You had a big win then. If you scored 32 to like 10, then you easily doubled him at the very least. So you're saying you tripled him in wounds?
I believe I did. If not, it was like one off from
Yeah.
tripling.
I mean,
Um,
I've got it as a 9-0 victory in your favor. So, and listening to what you're talking about, it's like, yeah, that makes sense now. Because Lords of Battle is one of those ones where when I play it, like I can win, but I never seem to really win big because I can score more than my opponent, but I can't score like double. And it's a double where you really start pulling away from that minor to that major victory. So as much as I enjoy that scenario, I never really can win big. So to get like 9-0, you must have been really tearing stuff apart.
oh yeah, I was rolling 5s and 6s out my butt, and with that +1 to wound, that's really all I needed. Like I was basically fighting a mirror army to a point, and what was saving me is that even though my heroes weren't as hard hitting as his, my basic troops were better. So again, I just bogged down the heroes and then let my basic troops carry because I had 2 banners, so I had rerolls coming my way too.
Right.
Did you wound Thror?
To be honest with you, I don't remember off the
'Cause
top of my head.
that's the only way you could have gotten a 3 was if you had at least doubled him. That's 5 points, 1 point for wounding, and then you weren't broken.
No, I was nowhere near
That's
broken.
3 points. So 5 and 3 is 8. So you had to have done 1 wound to Thor at least.
Well,
Yeah, it was, I think it was something cheeky too. I think an actual dwarf bow may have done it, if memory serves, but I wasn't 100% sure if he fate saved or not, so I didn't want to give bad information.
yeah. Well, and if he tripled, it would have been 7, and maybe it was just a write down wrong. Who knows?
Yeah.
It's not the.
It would have been 7 and 3, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
But either
But,
way, it was a big victory.
Yeah,
if it's 10 points,
again,
Richie, you won even better.
there you go. It was one of those, like you said, it's one of those scenarios where it's really hard to get like that 12-0 kind of victory because trying to get that many wounds compared to an enemy army, the game's well balanced, so you're not just
Yeah.
gonna go through and start mulching people either.
Yeah.
Yeah, example, me and Dan, we were, I think the final tally was like 38 to 32 or something like that. It was close.
Yeah. I mean, you're playing an army that could potentially do it, which is why I can believe I can definitely believe you tripled in the fact that you have a high defense army with defense 7. The only thing that really gets better than that is Iron Hill shield walling to defense 8, which is what Joe was playing, and he had a very high score for his game as well. Looking at him now, and then having that strength 4, I mean, yours was a little bit better than his hitting power because your strength 4 with +1 to wound. But that's really like I really see like dwarves are like the only army, that's coming to the top of my mind. I have a better than average chance at getting that 12-0 victory.
Yeah, especially Joe's, where Joe, he had 3 or 4 heroes that were all +1 to wound
Yeah.
with multiple attacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had Gloin, Dwalin, Dane,
Dane.
and Young Thorn.
Yeah.
Young Thorn
And
doesn't get the +1, but he's still a nasty freak row at combat. So
Yeah. Well, it's not
yeah,
Young
so
Thorn. It's Thorin, King of the Mountain,
oh, okay,
because he was
okay.
playing Erebor Reclaim. So he had Thorin, King under the Mountain, as his leader, and then Dane is in that list. Dane's just a hero of valor instead of a legend, and Dwalin and Glowin, and I think Glowin gets +1 to wound, and Glowin and Dwalin both have weapon masters, so they're never unarmed. Yeah, it
Glowing
was.
Glowing gets +1 to wound, re-rolling ones.
Yep. And I think Dwalin can get that as well. Not re-rolling ones, but I think you can get 3 attacks with +1 to wound, or you can go 4
3 attacks +1 to wound, or 4
Yeah.
at strength 5.
Yeah, and I think his thing is he always goes 4 4 at strength 5, which, strength 5 can wound defense 7 on 5s just as well as strength 4 doing it with +1. So might as well go ahead and throw that 4th dice. And yeah. Well, no, I did that wrong. So 5s on 7 is 5, and +1 would be 4. I think he likes the whole idea of being able to get that 4th dice. It's just one of those things where he plays a lot of cap-heavy armies, and he's seen it where you get that 3-attack hero that charges in. It seems to always be that 4th dice is the one that gets the 6. You'll roll a 1, a 2, a 4, and then the 4th dice that you see is a 6. So I can understand his thought process behind doing that. It just helps.
It's very situational.
Yeah. They can just help guarantee the win or the victory for the dual roll. So,
yep.
So we have both you guys sitting on major victories after round 2 then.
Correct.
Yep.
So now we're rolling into round 3, which is unique scenarios where you guys got to pick veto and pick the scenario. So we'll go ahead and we'll go back to Josh and let Josh talk first about round 3.
I did round 2. Do you want Richie to flip-flop back to round?
No, I'm going to let you do round 3. I have my reasons.
Okay.
I have my reasons. I'm sure you know why.
Go to the 6th place guy. Okay.
Oh, look at that. He already gave away his standing.
I just dropped my phone. That's what I get for being smart aleck. Okay.
Sorry, I just jammed my knee against the desk, so don't feel bad. Because I'm a smart aleck, too.
Oh, yeah, that's why we all get along so well.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
So my last round was on a one of your classic Rohan boards.
You love my Rohan boards. Don't say it like that.
No, I do. I do enjoy your boards. I have played on them many times.
Okay, fair enough.
It was against the Fangorn player, who was a wonderful person, very enthusiastic, had a lot of energy even at the 3rd round, and I did not have the energy to cope. I remember looking across at him going, how do you have this much energy at round 3? It's like, okay. But he was a wonderful guy, very enthusiastic. When he saw me put Sauron on the board, he's like, I don't care how this game goes. I just want to fight that guy. So we rolled. He vetoed first. Very smartly, he vetoed Fog of War. Given my number advantage and my ability to move quickly, and I would have been able to capture terrain much easier than he would have. So that left me with Clash by Moonlight or Assassination, and I was not going to choose Assassination.
Really?
Because my Ringwraith and Marshall being my assassin, and being his targets, I was not comfortable in protecting them. So I did choose Clash, which minimized my magic down to a 12-inch. I knew he couldn't move unless if he wanted to shoot, he couldn't move. So I felt comfortable he would have to keep coming at me. So I deployed up, waited for him to get close, and using my magic, whittled the will and fate off of all of his heroes. He had Treebeard, Quick Beam, and Birch something.
Beach Bone.
Yeah,
that's what it was. And by the time he got into combat, all of his will was gone and all of his fate was gone. And I believe I had even taken most of his might from him having to might things up to try and avoid things.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And them being immune to transfix and all that jazz really limited me to just Chill Soul and Black Dart.
Right.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. So by the time they got into combat, my left flank, which had the Ringwraith and most of my guys, was essentially to slow him down in one alleyway, so Sauron could go down the other and kill the 3 Ents that were over there. By the time lines had clashed, it was, we just said his name, I already forgot, Beachbone?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
You're good, bro.
All
You're
the
good.
trees, can't remember. It was Beachbone and 2 regular Ents. Quickbeam and Treebeard with 1 extra Ent had gone down, or however many Ents were left over had gone down the other path.
Yeah.
Sauron charged a regular Ent and one-shotted it in 1 combat.
I'm not surprised.
At that moment, my opponent went, "Oh man, I didn't think he could do that." And the entire tempo of the match then changed, where he was trying to avoid Sauron as much as possible. Um,
So
I did kill Beachbone, but Treebeard and Quickbeam with their little posse had pushed through my flank by the time I had pushed through his. So kind of flanked around, and in one fight with Treebeard, he did wound Sauron enough to break him. He did 3 wounds.
oh wow.
So I did break normally, but I still had all my heroes alive. And given the fact that heroes remaining alive at the end of the game was important, he was going after my marshal pretty heavily because he did dehorse him at one point, but I was able to run him around enough to keep him out of the fight. And between Sauron and the Ringwraith, my standfast was enough to keep all my guys from running away. It was pretty close there for a few rounds. We got to, he had 2 Ents, Treebeard, and Quickbeam left. Sauron was able to kill 1 Ent. I then went into Treebeard. That's when I lost the fight. But then I rallied and was able to kill Treebeard in 1 go because I had already taken all of his fate off with magic.
Nice.
Then when he died, Merry and Pippin obviously were dismounted. Next turn, Sauron charged both of them and slaughtered them in 1 go. And at that point, he was quartered and the game was over. If I remember correctly, he had 1 hero left, so I got the 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
We were both broken, so we both got 3 points there. And then he got 1 for killing Sauron, and he got 1 for wounding Sauron, and I got 2 for killing Treebeard.
Right.
So that came to my math, 6, 7, 8 to 4.
Yep, 8-4 is what I have you down for.
And yes, because I remember afterwards I was like, if you didn't have that 5-point system, I would have had a major.
Well, I feel like
I agree with your reasoning and everything. It's just that I'm so used to the 4-point. I was like, oh, I've been robbed.
Yeah. Well, and it really kind of helped out, I feel, because with 24 people, there were some games that were very close. Like, your game sounds very close to me. I'm actually really impressed.
It was very close.
So segue question, because I'm sitting here listening. I'm curious. When you're killing these Ents with Sauron, how is he doing it? Is he just like straight up mono your strength versus their defense?
Yes.
Okay.
So I would get Sauron into the fight because he's courage 7.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to charge him in, and then I would try and get as many extra guys in there as possible, just so I would be able to get the 6 and win the fight.
Right.
And then Sauron being strength 8, their defense 8.
Yeah.
I only need 4s.
Right. And Sauron has 4 attacks, right? Or am I going crazy?
Yep, 4 attacks.
Yeah, okay. So you got a really good chance to, at a minimum, roll 2 4s, and potentially, if you roll a 3, might it up.
Yeah, I usually got at least 3 4s, mm-hmm. And they only have 3 wounds, so I would kill them in 1 go.
Well, that's really good rolling then, too, because for me, my average would be maybe 2 wounds and then like 1s on the other 2 dice, so I don't even have a chance to might it up.
I mean, that happened once or twice where I rolled 3 1s and a 4.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, it's 1 wound.
Yeah.
We have next round.
Yeah. So that's pretty dang cool. And you put the fear of Sauron in him too, apparently.
Oh yeah. He had never played Sauron before, and when you see Sauron on the table, it's either a fear factor or a wow factor. And
Yeah.
sometimes both.
So let me
And
ask you this.
once that mace hits you, you feel it.
Right. Let me ask you this because I'm curious if you guys, if you did this the way I'm thinking you should, or if you did it a different way. So, Merry and Pippin, when Treebeard died, what happened to them when they became dismounted? Did you guys do falling damage?
We did not.
I did
Oh.
not either, because by the time Treebeard went down, it was just Merry and Pippin left on the board, and they were surrounded by a bunch of angry dwarves, so they were gonna die anyways. So
Fair
Similar
enough.
with me, by the time they were down, it was just Quick Beam and one other Ent, and Sauron was standing in front of them. So
Yeah. So you're not worried about the particulars because you're like, yeah, you're probably gonna die.
oh
yeah.
yeah.
Fair
And
enough.
when I charged in, I did 3 wounds. One got 1 wound, the other one had 2, so insta killed that one, and then the other failed his fate, so they both ended up dying.
Nice.
Yeah, and I was wounding them on 2s, like hobbits for dinner.
You say that, but again, with my luck, if I was rolling it, I'd roll 1s.
You just need to run Cause of Doom, that way you can re-roll your 1s.
You say that, and I used to have a Khazad-dûm army, and I've been looking, and there were a few of them that were for sale, and I'm just like, I really want to play them again because I really enjoyed playing them. But unfortunately, right now, financially, it is not a smart idea to do. But from a game
feel that.
standpoint, I would love to. So, and I think the way you did it, having that stone thrower to kind of mitigate the huge weakness of their mobility, is very smart. I think that's a common thing you see for those who play Khazad-dûm, is they put that stone thrower in there to help mitigate the weakness of mobility.
Yeah, between the blinding light and the stone thrower and the 8 other shots, my
Yeah.
whole idea was to just try to force them to come to me by giving me the range advantage.
Yep.
And then once they finally do hit my front line, they're like, well, crap, everything's strength 4 with +1 to wound. This is worse than just taking random shots.
Right.
So,
I mean, so Josh, you won. It was close. I mean, you just
It
needed.
was a minor win.
You just needed one more thing. You needed Treebeard not to wound Sauron.
That, or I needed to kill Quick Beam.
Right, because then you would have had
Quick Beam would have then
left.
put me up to 5 points.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that you ended up 2-0 or 2-1. That's not anything to scoff
I'm
at.
very happy with how I performed.
Yeah, I'd be impressed.
Especially
I
with
am impressed.
Barad-Dur, that's seen as not a competitive army by a lot of people.
Well, I mean, and you already kind of let the cat out of the bag, but you scored 6th.
Yeah.
Out of 24 people, that's top quarter. That's nothing to scoff at.
And given how close all of the top, at least 6 up people were,
yes.
I am very happy with my standing.
Well, and so the difference between you at 6th and Brandon, who has been on the channel before, and he was part of our talk when we talked about Moria. Richie, you were on with him and us. He scored 2 victory points less than you did. So that was the difference between your top 2 scores. It was you had a 2-win, 1-loss record at 8 tournament points and 20 victory points, and he had the same thing with 8 tournament points and 18 victory points. So
I think if my first game had not been the minor loss, I definitely would have been in the top 5.
Yeah.
If I was not a nice person, I would have been in the top 5.
Well, I mean, if you had won that, it would have been real close. You might have edged into top 3, to be honest.
yeah.
Yeah,
Your
the top
sportsmanship
5
gotcha.
people. The top 5 people were super close.
Yes.
Looking at those scores.
Yes. So I mean, we'll talk the top ranks at the end, but so real quick, since we already talked about Brandon, him being in at 7th, right below you. Well, the guy who came in 8th behind him had the exact same score. 2-1 with 8 tournament points and 18 victory points. So I had to go do a strength of schedule determination to figure out which one of them ranked higher. So That was one of those things where it's like, okay, this is literally the first time I'm going all the way down to my tertiary break, tertiary decision making. That's not even tertiary. It's like your my fourth option, because your first option is win loss records, your second option is tournament points, and your third option is victory points. And so then I had to go down to my fourth option, which was strength of schedule.
Yeah, it was a lot of good people and a lot of good players.
Yeah.
It was a very good event.
Yeah, the entire event was hard fought for everybody, I think, and that really goes to show considering how close everything was.
So, Richie, let's talk round 3, bro. I've
Round
already heard
3.
it, but I'm curious to hear your perspective.
So, round 3, I fought Joe. Again, it's more dwarves, so dwarf on dwarf civil war. We talked how, he's got 4 heavy hitting heroes. I lost the roll off, so Joe got to dictate what he was getting rid of first. And given what he got, he chose to get rid of Fog of War, which really surprised me given that he had the mobility advantage, because he had I think 4 goat riders, and then 2 of his heroes were mounted. So he got rid of that one, which really shocked me. I think he was trying to mitigate the ballista that I had.
So he won the roll off for the veto.
Yes, I believe so, because he got rid of Fog of War, and then I had to pick. Or
You guys must have done it backwards then, because the way I have
Yeah.
it, the way I do it is I think the way they do
Lowest
it.
vetoes first.
Yeah, the guy who rolls lowest vetoes first, because then the winner essentially gets to pick the scenario of the remaining 2. Which, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, you let the guy pick the scenario based off of a dice roll. Yeah, well, how else am I going to do it? So
yeah, I believe he got the higher, so yeah, he should have been second then. Again, it was round 3, so I think we made that mistake.
yeah.
Well, but
that's kind of interesting though, because I know his thought processes for why he got rid of Fog of War first, and he's kind of just compounding his errors, so to speak.
I imagine that it really didn't change much in the end, because even if Richie had gotten to choose first, Richie already pointed out he thought Fog of War would have been the better option, so that would have been the first one off.
Right, that's true.
And so I ended up getting rid of Clash, because I did not Clash, Assassination. I got rid of Assassination because I did not want all those heavy hitting heroes to come in and tear apart my banners and my lower stats heroes, because the banner bearers count as heroes for the purpose of Assassination.
Yep, they have the hero keyword.
Yep. So we ended up playing Clash by Moonlight, which cut all my shooting down to a foot. And I definitely had the shooting advantage, because he only had 5 crossbows, I think.
I think he had 6, but not very many. He wasn't going shooting heavy with it.
It wasn't a whole lot.
Did you cut down the siege engine shooting?
Yes, I did, and I needed to get a natural 6 on that, because we talked about that on Jason's board, but I can't remember if siege engine can still shoot at full distance or not, but I think I only shot
They
at
still shoot at full. Outside the 12 is where they need that natural 6. Inside the 12, they did not need the natural 6.
Correct.
Oh well, I either rolled 6s on it or 2s anyways, so it really didn't come to a point where it mattered, because it only landed hits 3 times, and every time it landed a hit, it rolled a 6. So I'm not complaining. But we ended up playing on the Bree board, and I posted up right around the walls around the town of Bree, and again I just did the same bubble formation as I did in round 2, and let him come to me. As he started to get closer, the ballista hit, I think round 2 or 3, and when it hit, it was a direct hit, and it wiped out like 3 goat riders, knocked a bunch of models prone. Like it did a lot of work. But by the time the lines clashed, all the models were dehorsed essentially, or degoated, for the exception of one regular soldier and Dane on the boar, and even Dane's boar took a wound.
Yeah, that's what he had told me.
Yeah, like my shooting with that +1 to wound, it really helped me. Like my range went down, but my lethality went through the roof. Which I needed against dwarves, to be honest.
That is the purpose of Clash by Moonlight.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So Dane goes ahead and charges into my right flank, and he's trying to get in on Durin that's close by, and Durin gets into the fight as well, and we both strike up, and I win the roll off, and next thing you know, Dane goes down like second turn into combat, and the middle and the left-hand side of the line hasn't even collided yet, and the right flank's already getting pushed back. Because the ballista knocked so much stuff over, it really delayed everything. Then Gloin pushes in where Dane was, and is trying to hold back the line. As I'm starting to get pushed back a little bit on the right flank, then the left and the center get engaged by Dwalin and Thorin. And thankfully, Thorin got shot off of his goat, so he was a lot less threatening on heroic combats. And the King's Champion and Dwalin just kept fighting it out every turn. I think by the end of the game, because I kept rotating the banner bearers off of the King's Champion and increasing their fate with Blessing of the Valor, by the end of that round, the King's Champion burned through like 9 or 10 fate or something ridiculous like that. So,
yeah, he had mentioned how I don't think he even remembered that you were doing the Blessing of the Valor. He just remembered primarily that he was going in there against the King's Champ, and it just felt like every turn the King's Champ was right there on the edge. And he said he told us in his summary, like, I had him down to 1 wound left, but I just couldn't get rid of him. And he'd swap out with the new guy, and the new guy would have 1 or 2 fate points and just be able to prevent whatever. Because I mean, Dwalin's great, but Strength 5 against Defense 8 is natural 6s, so it's tough to wound him even with 4 dice.
yeah.
That's where the +1 to wound would help him there.
Yeah.
Instead of the 4 attacks.
I think his whole thing at that point was like they're both tied fight at 6.
Yeah.
I think he just wanted, and that's why I say like the +1 would be great, but it's one of those things where if Richie throws his 3 dice and rolls a 2-2-5, and then he rolls his 3 dice and rolls a 2-2-5 or whatever, and it's like, oh damn, well I'm tied. Well, if you roll that 4th dice, you get that 6 and win. It's like,
I agree.
Maybe in that situation it would have been better for him to go ahead with the extra dice, because I don't know how his rolls turned out. Like, were there times where he got a 6 and a 5, and that 5 could have been a wound if he was going with the +1? Who knows?
Yeah, it was very much back and forth. If it wasn't for the fact of just feeding fate into the King's Champion as much as I could, then he would have collapsed a lot earlier on. Young Thorn was really the one that ended up pushing.
Just regular Thorn, it's not Young Thorn.
Yeah, my apologies. I keep thinking it's Young. But
you're so
Thorn,
used to playing against Josh with Thorn the second, or Thorn whatever.
Respect his age. He's an old man.
And he dies.
I'm too used to fighting you, Josh.
So many doors. So many.
Thorn was really pushing the left flank, and that's what primarily ended up collapsing. And once that happened, the King's Champion was in too much danger, so I just backed him off and pretty much just let the left flank completely collapse and positioned my middle up as best as I could to make sure that he couldn't get to any of my banners or the King's Champion, because like Joe said, he was down to 1 wound. I didn't want to give him any hero kills,
Yeah,
so I backed him off, and then Galadriel just kept trying to um the good guy version of transfix.
Command, I believe.
Command, yeah.
no,
Command Wallen and lock him into place.
it's immobilize.
No, command is. It's one of
Compel.
those.
It's immobilize.
Immobilize, yes.
Oh, mobilize, thank you.
Command is the compel one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of fits exactly what Joe was saying. He said that like Dane went down early in combat because he'd lost all of his fate when you shot him off his boar or something like that, and
Yeah.
he had taken a wound and just failed every single fate. So he was rolling in there with no fate and 2 wounds or something, and like by the second turn he just rolled absolute dog crap and got gang piled by you. And it basically matches up. Like he pushed through, but then you did the smart thing and just turtled up and protected your heroes, that's what that scenario is all about. It's about going and getting heroes.
Yeah, and again, he had the better heroes by far. So I had to be very strategic on where I put my King's Champion and where I put Durin at. Because they can soak up some damage, but like my Ballista Captain, my Heralds, Galadriel would fold like a cheap suit if they were fighting any of those big heroes. So I really relied on my basic troops with that +1 to wound to really put in the work against his heroes.
Yep.
But for the life of me, I could not kill Dwalin. I tried and tried and tried, and as soon as I disengaged with the King's Champion, I couldn't win another fight against him. Young Thorin, I'm gonna keep doing that. Ran amok, but I kind of just let him do that because I was winning. As far as troop numbers went, so having one of his heroes just get bogged down into my numbers wasn't bad. And then Durin was able to kill Dane and Gloin, so
Yeah, Thorin's good, but once you take him off his goat, the hitting power is just not there because you're playing a good army, so you don't have to worry about the hatred or Bane or whatever it is. I think it's Bane. Yeah, it's Orc Bane because that allows you to reroll failed wounds, I believe.
Orc Bane is the D3 wounds.
That's it, D3. Okay. Never mind. But it's Bane of Kings that rerolls all failed.
Yeah.
Anyway, on foot, he's only 3 attack. Strength 4. He doesn't have any +1 modifiers. You know, he's more scary when he's on the goat, yes, because when he charges, he gets 4 attacks and he gets knocked down. So he doubles those 4 attacks, which makes it easier to get the kills. But on foot, he's less likely to go break through and kill 6 guys a turn. Which mounted, he very well can do that with his free heroic combat every turn. Is easily go kill 6 troops a turn.
Especially up against like defense 5 elves.
Exactly.
Like if he got behind me, it would have been all over.
Yeah, but when he's fighting your front line of defense 7, yeah.
The one way to try and get him that +1 to wound is if he has Orcrist, it is a hand and a half. So you can have the option for the +1, but you do get the -1.
Right, in the dual roll. And if he's fighting on his own, which is kind of what it sounds like Richie said, and it's kind of matches up with what Joe was saying. He was saying that basically the same thing. Like his Thorin was doing plenty, but this is a scenario where breaking points matter, but not as much as you, or they do matter. They actually matter a lot, but
it's that hero.
Yeah, the hero thing is big too. So
yeah, by the time I decided to let Thorin run amok, I already had such a numbers advantage. I was okay with throwing troops his way just to make sure that my heroes were secure, and it gave Galadriel more time to keep her spells going.
Yeah.
Which was definitely key in this fight. and the fact of positioning that I was able to get the dwarf bows and my artillery piece up on the walls
Yep.
at Bree. It gave them a clear line to just keep shooting the entire game. Like my two dwarf bows just kept shooting spear supports the entire game. Like I always had a round of shooting. It never stopped for me, and I think that's what really hurt him.
I think if I remember correctly, Eve said something about one of those bows is the reason why Thorin got taken off his goat.
Yes, the dwarf bow on the left, he took out 3 different goats and wounded Dane's boar, so that one dwarf bow did better than any elf bow.
That's crazy. Well, I mean, the
Yeah,
scenario helps, but that's still crazy.
yeah.
So,
So the fact that his goats just went down really quickly and never got a chance to do anything for the exception of one, and that his heroes just got dismounted early on or straight up killed, and not everything hit at once because of that, just it really helped take the pressure off of Galadriel. So he kind of trickled in, and whatever damage he was doing, Galadriel was pretty much repairing.
right.
So
Yeah.
but it was a good game. I killed 2 of his heroes. I didn't lose any of mine. I broke him. I don't think I broke. I may have. I'm not.
No,
If
I have you down as an 8-0 victory.
okay, yeah. I think I was like 2 away from break or something
Yeah.
really close. But
Yeah, that would be 5 and 3 right there.
Yeah.
If the leader was never wounded or killed.
Yeah.
So that would have been 5 for the break and 3 for the killing more heroes.
Yeah.
yeah,
So this is one of those interesting scenarios where I think it's like the only scenario that does this too, where breaking, if you're both broken, it's 3, and if someone's broken and the other one's not, it's 5. I
I'm
think,
pretty sure it's the only one.
yeah, I know To the Death has a large count for it as well, but I think it's like 2 and 4 or 1 and 4 or something like that. But
I
that
think
one,
2 and 4.
yeah, that one's more around quartering because that game goes to a quarter, and as soon as someone's quartered, the game ends. So the extra points for that one is put towards quartering. But yeah,
yeah.
it's actually one of those things. So I played this scenario because you guys, I know you guys, we're not talking about my games, but I'll cover mine. I played this scenario in round 3 just because of the fact that I was playing Great Company, all heroes. I went ahead and vetoed Fog of War to give my opponent the simple choice of kill my guys by Clash by Moonlight or pick one guy that you're easily going to be able to target and kill since every model is a hero. Well, he easily killed more heroes than me because I didn't kill any of his heroes, and he killed like 6 or 7 of my models. Uh, but I ended up breaking him. He was playing Mortar with the Great Beast of Gorgoroth, and I killed the Great Beast of Gorgoroth. And when it fell, like all the guys that were in the Howdah took the falling damage, and like 7 or 8 of those guys died. Well, that ended up,
Damn.
yeah, that ended up breaking him. And then, the time ran out, and I was like, okay, well, you killed more heroes than me, so you should win. Oh wait, I broke you, and you're not, and I'm not broken. Oh shit, I won. Like it was one of those ones where I didn't even realize that it was 3-5, so I won as the ringer, and I totally didn't even try to win. Like I purposely got rid of the scenario that would be to my advantage to play, which was Fog of War, to give him the ability to play Assassination or Clash by Moonlight.
The
I
thing with
mean,
the dice game.
yeah.
Right,
At the end
right.
of the day, you throw dice and see what happens. Like so, but.
So you
It
had
was
a
it was a good game, like definitely. And again, just fighting, defense 8 against my defense 7, but my +1 to wound carried me, and my higher
yeah.
fight in the back line helped
That's
me. So,
so you had 8-0 to victory. Don't want to gloss over that too much. So that gave you your third victory.
hmm
Yeah,
Third major?
third
third
major.
major.
Yeah.
And he went 2 games in a row there without allowing a single victory point either.
I've gotten good at mitigating victory points because of Josh. All the credit goes to him on that one.
Which, well,
Damn
since
it,
you bring
Josh.
that up,
You made a power gamer out of him.
The other day when me and him met up and his sister came to play as well, uh, she asked me like, uh, how does it feel to have the guy you taught outrank you and beat you in every game, every tournament you go to? I'm like, I don't know why you have to bring that up. It's like,
It's okay.
I did train him. Doesn't mean that he's better than me. Jeez.
She's starting to kick my butt, so.
I don't know. The quantifiable stats are saying otherwise.
Okay, those who can't teach. Okay, so apparently I am in my happy teaching zone.
Yeah, well, those who can't play teach, exactly. Yeah. I mean,
I had a hell of a teacher.
so is that why I've been teaching folks a lot lately?
Yep, that's why. That's why you're also TO.
Wow, okay, but I like playing. So real quick before we go over the end of the event, you were curious why. So Joe got rid of Fog of War, so it sounds like he made a double mistake. And I mean, I can understand it by, like Josh said, it's round 3 after a long day. You've already played 5 hours worth of games, with them being 2.5-hour games. And I can understand that if you run the roll off and, because a lot of places I've seen they do that. Like the winner of the roll off mitigates or vetoes first, which, again, in my mind, that doesn't make sense. You should be the one essentially picking the scenario.
It depends. I can see it going both ways. It depends on most of the time you may only have one scenario that is bad and the other two are kind of neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you veto first, having won the roll off, you can get rid of that one bad,
Right.
and then either one can go in your way.
Right, and I think that's kind of the reason why folks like the veto system. Is usually when you're building an army, of the 6 pools, there's one that you're likely to do very good at. There's one where you can do good or you're neutral towards it, and there's one that you just don't really like at all. So having that ability just to get rid of that. But so Joe's reason for getting rid of Fog of War goes to exactly what you said, Richie. You said it. You said it a couple times. His heroes were better than yours. On a 1-to-1 mano-y-mano standpoint, he thought he had the better heroes.
I agree.
What he failed to think about, and I don't want to knock it too much because this is only that was his 2nd, 3rd, and 4th game he played with that army. And you guys were playing top table at the end of the day. So, I kind of quietly let you both in on that while you were playing so you knew what you were fighting for.
Yeah, because I had no idea. I was just throwing dice and having a good time. Like
Yeah.
I had no idea what my standing was, and I was telling everybody, I'm just here for a good time because I never thought Cause of Doom could get up that high. So
Well, and that's the one thing I like about the way I do table assignments is I don't do it based off of rank. I just put you on a table. I try to make sure that the players on the table have not played on that table yet, but I just put you on a table. It's not table 1 is the top ranked people. Like people do that, and I've noticed as well at events where the better tables are always at the top end, and it's like, so the guys who are just there to have fun or are new to the game, like you're putting them on the bottom tables where potentially the worst terrain's at. Why should the new people be playing on the crappier boards? I'll be honest, my worst boards are at the bottom tables just because of the fact that when I was putting my boards together for the event, I naturally always list my best boards first, because when I think of my boards, it's like, oh yeah, I have to have this board first because this is my best board, and I have to have this one, and I have to have that one. And then when I'm sitting there going, okay, now I've got more people, now I got to start adding a board. Okay, what board can get added? So I that's why I did it. So, but I felt like with you guys both being 2-0 with 2 majors each, you kind of deserve to know that this is what you're fighting for. This is what's on the line. So
yeah,
I don't know if it added any pressure or anything, but yeah.
Like after you told me of like, hey, try and like go for it, and kind of gave me that nudge. I'm like, okay, Jason just told me to bring the pain. it didn't register until probably about the fourth turn in of why you kind of meant that.
Yeah.
Because I thought you would just like take Joe down a peg, and I was like, I got you.
Well, no, you had leaned over to do something, and Joe was looking at me because I was playing next to you, and I mouthed to him top table and pointed at him, and he kind
Yeah.
of went okay, and that's when he went to the bathroom, and I was like, okay, if I told Joe, I got to tell you because I can't play that favorite game,
Yeah.
and he did that, and that's why I whispered, I was like, you're top table, like
Yeah, and I appreciated that because honestly, I was just going to take out as many models as I could. So
right. So,
because
but yeah, he like you said, his heroes mono and mono were better, but he failed to think about the synergy of how your whole army played. And it wasn't your heroes that took down Dane. It was your support pieces. It wasn't because you said you killed Glowin. It wasn't. I think Durin killed Glowin, if I remember, is what he said, and you would know better
yep,
than me.
that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So Durin is probably your best hero who can go toe to toe with his heroes, and there you go. But then just he said it himself. He's like, I fought guys that were the same defense as me, but then when they would win because they had a higher fight value support, and then I'd die because of the +1. And I was like, yeah, his army synergy was like he's very happy with this airborne reclaimed list he's built because he likes the way it all works together. And he just failed to see the synergy of your army until you started playing, and that's why he got rid of Fog of War. Because we talked about it, after the event and then last week, and he was like, "Yeah, if I had to do it all over again, Fog of War would have been the way I go because it would have forced you to move your army apart and start making you lose some of that synergy. Because if you've got to go grab an objective to try and get your 3 points." For the score, then you're moving a hero or you're moving models away, and it's like, all right, you're stretching away that synergy now. Now maybe the King's Champ can't get those fate points back on his Herald. Now maybe the King's Champ and his Heralds die,
Which changes a lot because honestly, if it ended up being Fog of War, I would have sent the King's Champion, a Herald, and the Vault Warden teams out to go capture the objective because then everything's either defense 8 or 9, and I can push and hold for a good period with them.
Yeah.
But whether it was round 1, round 2, or round 3, I was able to keep my army all together, so I had that synergy. And if I did have to break off for whatever reason, again, it was the King's Champion and those Vault Warden teams that went out and did it because, that 3 might on a hero to go push, and then the defense 9 on the Vault Warden teams on top of it. Regardless of what that's gonna have to fight, it's gonna do okay.
Well, the King's Champ has 2 might.
Oh, that's right. He's got 3 attacks.
3 attack. Yeah, that's where he's good. He's kind of like a Condish King.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, defense 9 when he's in his little triangle you're not going to break that easily.
No. But I would only get him up to like defense 8 because I'd want to at least keep one banner with Durin and
Right.
Galadriel. So
Right.
that's why the Vault Wardens would help keep it in like a V formation so he doesn't get flanked.
Smart. Yeah, that's smart.
So,
But yeah, so you went 3-0, my friend.
I know. I was
3-0
telling
with 3 majors.
Yeah, I never thought it would happen. It was insane. I think that's the first time I've got 3 major victories at such a high point value. I think I've only ever gotten 3 major victories at one other tournament, and so this was definitely something special.
So not only did you get 3 majors, what did that end up getting you?
I ended up with first place with 12 tournament points and 29 victory points.
And the White Wizard Trophy.
Yes. The dwarves brought it home with Lady Galadriel, and she is now number 1 with the dwarves.
Well, I think what's his name? Gimli went back in time and put in a good word with his great grandfather.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's exactly what happened.
He's like, hey, Papa Durin, go get with Lady Galadriel. She's cool.
And it's crazy to me is that the entire concept for Richie's army was an offhanded comment I had made one time when Richie said he wanted to play Cause of Doom. He just didn't really know how to make it work.
Yeah.
It was a
And
complete offhanded comment of you can ally in like Lothlorien to get your spear supports, and they're yellow allies, so you just need like Haldir or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that it was just one offhanded comment. Richie studied and put together a good team, and that just it just did far better than anyone could have expected.
So,
including myself.
so you as the master handed a small kernel of knowledge to the apprentice, and he went and
Yep.
studied that and wielded it into his own idea, and look what happened.
I gave Josh the win. I gave Richie the army to win the entire tournament. If I just took my own advice, maybe I'll get somewhere.
Like I said, I had a good teacher, Josh. All credit goes to you, buddy.
I take no credit. That it was all you, buddy. You did great.
Well, I mean, you can take some credit too as well, because your minor loss, Josh Brown came in second, so he was 3-0 as well, but he had 2 majors and a minor. So
I was the only person that came close to beating Josh in that event.
yes,
I know that for sure.
yes, that is
Yeah.
100% true.
Because Josh ended up with 11 tournament points versus my 12, and as far as victory points to show how close it was, I had 29, he had 23.
Yep.
So if he did end up with a major on you, Josh, he would have been right behind me, even on victory points.
Yeah.
So,
but
yeah,
you're welcome.
I mean, it was close. So, I mean, third place went 3-0 and had 9 tournament points. So I had actually screwed that up when I did my rankings, because 4th and 5th.
Math.
Well, I'm an idiot. 4th and 5th had 2 wins and a tie, and they had 2 majors each. So they both had 10 tournament points, and I was looking at the tournament points and not the win-loss column when I was doing my rankings, just because it's easier to try and look quickly at all the numbers. 12 counting down to 1 for whatever reason in my mind was easier to keep track of. And yeah, but there you go. You had 3 guys score in a traditional top 3 event, all go 3-0. And the differences was their majors and their minors.
And then the next ones had 10 victory points.
Yeah, 4th and 5th, 10 victory points.
Yeah, and then I was there at 6th with 9. It was close the entire way down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you had 8.
It was definitely an amazing
I had
tournament.
8 or 9, whatever.
Yeah, 8. Yeah, but I mean, 4th and 5th, their difference was 1 victory point.
Yes.
Yeah, because 4 for a major.
My math is bad. We just talked about math being bad. So.
It was close. I mean, there was even stuff like all the way down, kind of middle of the pack, where I have guys who were. Now I'm in the losers quote unquote bracket, where you had
the
guys,
non-winners. Remember, you had that.
Folks going 1 and 2, but the first 2 guys that went 1 and 2 had 5 tournament points and 14 victory points. So I had to go to yet another scenario for rankings where I went to the 4th tiebreaker. It was Tracy.
I'm
was
glad I
there
wasn't the TO. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, I'm sure you guys. I don't know how closely you were paying attention to me, because I was doing all these rankings and figuring out while Tracy was doing the what do you call it? The raffle. And I knew that like my face was just losing its poker face more and more as I calculated this out. And I'm just sitting there going, "Oh my god, why?" Like I could just imagine. I was sitting there hunched over with my hand on my chin, just like, and my mouse going back and forth, clicking and typing. And I'm just like, if anybody looks at me, they're probably just like, "Bro."
Yeah, we saw you were head in the screen, just like 10 inches, not even 10 inches away, like 5 inches away from the screen. Just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, Jason, it looked like you were getting audited by like the IRS, man.
No, if that happens, I'm prostrate over a chair with my legs spread. Okay, we know how that happens. So maybe I was more like getting the 4th degree in a murder interview or something like that.
Pretty much, that's what it looked like.
But yeah, I mean, and that's why I called a few folks up there, like, hey, double check this score for me. Like, is this what you scored, right? Like, you're this close. So, but yeah, Josh, I mean, if you'd won that first game, that would have put you at 3-0, and we'll say your other two scores stand. That would have given you, a 2. It sounds like you would have had a minor victory, so 2 minors and a major would have put you at 2nd place.
Yeah, because it would have essentially flip flopped the scores to where I was 1 point over, so I would have had 3.
Yeah.
So 6, I would have had 10 victory points.
Yeah.
Or tournament points.
Yeah.
We both could have podium, Josh.
Yeah.
Could have come down and taken 1st and 2nd.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, don't be the nice guy.
No, it pays to be the nice guy.
If you're going to win, don't be the nice guy. That's it. If you want the podium, don't be the nice guy.
Well, and so in my opinion, and this is where, who you play against can determine how good of a nice guy you are. You said it yourself. Josh was a very nice opponent. He was a very sporting opponent. And
it was considerate. He was very considerate with the situation.
Yes. So now if he had sat down at the table and been a complete jerk, I am willing to put $100 on the table and bet that you wouldn't have said a word when you noticed that he was doing something wrong.
If it was like the first time we had played, probably not.
Yeah.
Because that first time when it was super stressful and like there was 0% chance for me to win, I know in the very first time we played and the bat got the objective and started running back, I was like, well, I can't win. I don't care anymore, so I'm just going to slaughter his army, and I did. If I remember correctly, he had like 4 guys in Azog left by the time the game ended.
I'm surprised you didn't end up tabling him the first time y'all played, because you were just going for it.
Yeah, I think it was retrieval, so it ended with that 1 or 2 at the very end.
Yeah. The random.
If it had kept going, I would have tabled him because there was just no stopping me. But no, he was a very considerate player, and he did a very good job. And I don't feel bad giving him the heads up.
Right. Well, I mean, there you go. So, Josh, top quarter, Richie took home the white trophy. I'd say the gold, but we didn't do a gold, silver, or bronze. We did a white, a brown, a gray, a brown, and 2 blues.
Yeah.
You know what? It is sitting up on top of my trophy shelf, and it's looking pretty. I'm happy with white.
He did forget it in the car when we got back into town. He got out, got to his car, and left it in the trunk of our car.
I did.
Like, he'll get it tomorrow.
Yeah. After that 7-hour drive, I was done.
7 hours and 7.5 hours worth of game time the day before.
Worth it.
It's a busy weekend, but a very fun weekend.
Agreed.
Yeah, I had a blast, and I was the guy running the thing. Outside of the stress of setting it up in the morning, that was kind of rough.
Stress of setting it up, stress of telling the numbers.
Well, I mean, so the setup. This is actually the first time I've used that location for a larger event. Like, we ran an event in June there last year at that clubhouse, and we only had like 12 people show up, so it was no big deal. We got there an hour ahead of time, had everything set up. But this
and you
time,
only expected 15.
Yeah,
for this one.
I was expecting 14 to 16. So when I hit like 18, I was like, oh, hey, cool. And then there was like that last surge of like 6 people. I was just like, okay, good thing I made the max 24.
Are we gonna have enough space? And we did.
We barely had enough space. You guys
We
had to
made it
play
work.
with it. So, but we were kind of stressing on where to put certain tables at the beginning. I'll tell you what, our layout changed 3 different times while we were setting it up that morning, because what I had the doors open at like 8:30 or something, and I got there at like 7:15, and
Roughly.
I don't think it wasn't until almost 8 o'clock that we actually started putting terrain on the tables, because of how many times we had to rearrange the tables as we brought the table toppers in. So yeah, it was a little stressful.
It was nice having a full house, though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Seeing some old faces and whatnot, it was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, I mean, congrats to both of you. I mean, you both walked away as winners, both from a sportsman standpoint and from a score standpoint. Neither of you had a losing record. Yeah, what'd you guys think? What were your final thoughts on your armies? The whole. I mean, you've already given your thoughts on the event. I appreciate you giving me that, but
Yeah.
Richie's at
I
the oddball, so Richie, go first.
Yeah, okay. I officially like Khazad-dûm. Anything to come out of Moria is good on my book.
Apparently,
and
yeah.
So I enjoyed. It's definitely got good synergy. I love the people I fought against. It was definitely fun to wipe out my own line with the OG of all the dwarves. It was just a good time to have, and I would definitely play the army again. So
You looking to try it at lower points, or just to try and do it at 1,000 still?
I would definitely play it at 800, but I wouldn't play it at any lower than that, just because of the point cost of Galadriel and Durin.
Fair.
The piece of artillery that I paid for, it really didn't do anything. Round 1 against the Ents. Round 2, it only killed like 2 dwarves, and then it did a lot of work on Clash. But that was strictly because I was rolling 6s.
Yeah.
So I mean, taking that out and cutting a couple of the Vault Warden teams would pretty much get me close to 800 points as is. So that wouldn't be bad.
And I know you had a lot of internal debate on whether or not to take that ballista or to take the what was it called?
Shield Bearer.
The shield bearer, because they are the same point value, and I know you struggle with that a lot, but
Yeah, I'm glad that I actually took it over the Shield Bearer. Um, One, because he would have just had a hard time fighting the Ents. But two, with certain scenarios with having to kill a hero, he would have been very easy to get rid of. And the fact that I had the artillery piece sitting in the back, I could kind of safeguard objectives and use that 1 point of might to call a move at like the very last turn or second to last turn, just to make sure things were positioned the way it needed to be. So yeah, it was a bit of a point sink, but it came in handy in other ways besides shooting.
Well, its biggest thing, and that's just siege weapons in general. Their biggest thing is just the fear factor. The fear that while it's not like a large siege engine that has AoE for knockdown and stuff, but the blast back with the piercing shot is nothing to laugh at. And I mean, it's a strength 7, strength 8.
Strength 7, and I know you say it's nothing to laugh at, but every time I see a dwarf model get flung into the atmosphere, everybody was laughing at the table.
That's
like
fair.
it was funny.
That's fair. I guess you could. I mean, I say nothing to laugh at, as in like, oh, it's not that great. But yeah, it is kind of funny when you see somebody get blown away.
It brings a level of lightheartedness to the table.
Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those things where, it kind of makes your opponent have to play a little bit differently. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, what about you, Josh?
This was my first time taking Sauron out in a while, because my wife had been chilling with Sauron and Barad-Dur for quite a while. So I was playing dwarves, she was playing this, and lately she had been taking out my dwarves and trying them out, and they have been teaching her how to better use an army and better strategies to do. And this was one of her better events that she came in. I don't know what place she came in, but I know she did a lot better. And even Dan, when they played, uh, made a comment on how better she's gotten.
She came in 20th.
Yeah, so usually she comes in last, so she did improve.
Yeah.
Hey, she didn't go defeated. She had a tie in round 1, I think.
Yeah.
So
She had
that's half a win,
tie,
half a
and then
loss. So that's not going winless.
no, she did a very good job. And so this was one of my first opportunities to take out my evil armies again. I don't know what else I would really change in this list other than maybe swapping out the orc warriors with shields and getting more black Nunorians and orcs with spears. It would drop my numbers slightly below 50, but it really wouldn't change much of how the list functions. I am pretty happy with it. The spellcasting is very nasty. Against Ents, not so much, but that was also my first time playing Ents, so it was an experience. But overall, I feel it's very balanced, very and it's pretty competitive, I think.
So if you dropped out, she said you dropped the orcs with the spears. I mean, those I could see being
Shields.
The shields. Okay.
Yeah. I have 10 orcs with shields that I could drop half for Black Numenorians and then replace the shields with spears.
Right. To increase your line, basically.
Yeah. And it gives me more fight for.
Yeah. More defense 6 too is what I'm thinking as well.
Yeah.
That way, if somebody breaks, it makes it harder to break through that line where with more, the orcs with shields are only defense 5. It's easier to break through them,
Yeah. And they were there. I was going for the painted. I don't have a lot of painted spears.
Fair.
So I know you had that extra bonus thing.
Mm-hmm.
So because I had the painted shields, I threw them in for numbers instead of getting unpainted spears in the army.
Fair.
But if I was just going with not focusing on painted, I probably would have gone with the Black Numenorians and then spears behind.
Hey, well, there's always next year.
Yep. If I ever feel like painting orcs, which I never do. But...
Preach.
Yeah, it's probably the one thing that stopped me from playing Mordor because there's just so many possibilities with all the heroes. But every time I sit down and start thinking about it, it's just like, it means I have to paint orcs. I really don't want to paint orcs.
I get it. I had to paint 1,000 points of Goblin Town. I feel your pain.
Yeah,
all the orcs I have that are painted came from Joe. And if I remember correctly, Richie said Joe even commented that the Galadriel Richie was using was one of the ones I bought off him as well.
Yeah, his Galadriel betrayed him.
That's hilarious. But that's also cool though, as you think about it, it's like the bonds and the ties you make, the fellowship that comes from the game where it's like, oh hey, that's my model, I recognize it. And I mean at the end of the day, that's what Tolkien's work is all about. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's always fun to see a wild Joe at an event that we're not expecting to see him at, or an Andy, because Andy shows up in this area a lot. And it surprises us all the time.
He works in the DC-ish area, not Roanoke. He lives near Roanoke, because that's right on the North Carolina-Virginia border, if I remember right. But he works in that area, so he commutes up there every other week. And, I mean, you guys have usually monthly events by the Merv guys, and then I know Fredericksburg's doing their events pretty frequently as well. So if he's up there and there's an event going on, he just brings it. And he also has a lot of friends that are in that area too. So the weekend before the event, he was in Virginia hanging out with friends. So yeah, he usually travels with his models, and if there's something going on, he goes. Because, I mean, why not? If you're up there for work, might as well partake in other things. It almost makes me wish that I had a job where I could travel up there more often and get paid mileage.
Yeah, I keep 1,000 points of Moria in the truck just in case somebody ends up wanting to play a pickup game, and I can just spawn goblins.
There you go. Look at that. So.
Yeah. But Ashley has moved on to her new army, which is Goblin Town, so I may go back to my dwarves for a little bit, or I might stick with Sauron or my Balrog. We'll see how it goes.
Yes, because that's what we want to fight Goblin Town on repeat.
She played one practice game the other day, and walking to the car, I'm like, "What do you think?" She goes, I think nothing of dwarves anymore."
So what you're saying is we have a second Goblin Town player.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. That means I can put more goblin pelts on my wall. Right, Richie? Right?
Right? Hey, go for it. You know what? I'm happy that there's another Goblin player. I just wish it was Moria instead of Goblin Town. That's all I'm gonna say.
You can play her then. I'll sit back and not have to deal with that. That's great.
Hey, I fought Goblin Town 5 times now and have always broken it. I'm not scared of it.
So what I'm hearing is Josh is teaching yet another person that will soon surpass him.
Yeah, and
Pretty much.
I am doomed to repeat history.
I'm sorry.
Then me and Ashley are gonna have it out after she's ready.
Well, I mean, maybe next year she's playing on that top table. You never know.
You really don't.
It's for real.
No, she is her first game was a win against one of our players up here, Hunter, who's pretty good, and first time taking Goblin Town out at 600 points, won. So
nice.
Goblin Town is a very good good beginner army because it's really hard to lose.
It's also easy because you don't have to try and micromanage too many heroes. I mean, you're really you just have the captains there for movement, and then the king the Goblin King is just doing all the work. So,
you got 4 models to really think about. You got the Goblin King, you have Gollum, Grinna, and the Scribe. After those 4, it doesn't matter.
Yep. Well,
because everything can support too, which is nice.
Yeah, it's always good to have an army that can fully support itself, no matter what. And honestly, Grinna, in my opinion, you might want to try and pay attention to him, but at the end of the day, I think it's more just for knowing where that third point of might is, because he's not all that much better than a captain. I think he has strike.
The swap with me is the only thing I really consider with it.
Okay. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that I have used Grinna in a 300-point tournament before, and the fact that he has the whip of that has that 2-inch range, I killed a banner that was not touching anything else with that whip before, and ended up winning a match because of the throwing weapon of a whip. So it's
essentially a throwing stones. It's only strength 2, so I mean, like it does surprise you.
But it comes in handy. Like you can't knock the little stuff in a profile because the situations arise, and that can really make or
I'm
break
not
a
knocking
game.
it. It's like throwing stones, where it will catch you off guard, and it will surprise your opponent because they're like, "Oh, it's only strength 2. Oh, I'm dead." Okay.
Like Galadriel getting pelted to death by Merry and Pippin.
That's hilarious. That's probably the highlight so far that I've heard today.
So,
well, I've got nothing else other than to say thank you for taking the time to talk to me. Do you guys have any last minute things you want to add or thoughts you want to give?
thank you for having us, and I can't wait till next year.
Ditto. I can't. Not next year. I can't wait for the next event because that's in what 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah, I'm doing my next one in June. So,
yeah.
And that's
Richie may be in next year, but I'm coming. I'll be there.
June is the last one this year that I'm running, and then the fall event that I usually do, I have delegated that to another individual that asked about running an event. So I will let him do the hard work, and I get to just show up and play and provide support.
There you go.
Yeah, but yeah, I'll have stuff about that soon. So, but yes, thank you both for coming. I'm more than happy to put you guys up whenever. I know y'all will return the favor in the near future when I can get up there.
Oh, yep.
You'll
My
have to-
room's always open.
So. All right. All of our listeners who have stayed around for almost 3 hours now, I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about the event from Richie, Josh, and myself. It's primarily their perspective of the gameplay. Like I said, I will drop a link to the talk that Joe, Dan, and I had a week ago from this recording, talking from their perspectives, as well as a breakdown of game by game from me, once they have that up. And please like, share, subscribe. Take care, and enjoy your Middle Earth hobby.